Thank you for joining us. For those of you that are joining us here at City Hall, and those of you who join us on GrassRoots or our Zoom broadcasts, this is the Aspen City Council work session for October 18, 2022. Tonight's work session is more budget. Yeah. And tonight we start off with the Kids First Fund, and then we will be talking about water and electric utility funds. Then we have a little bit of time at the end there for in-depth council board reports and council updates and any items council wants to discuss. And we'll get right into our agenda with Kids First Fund first.
Budgets, yay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Diane Foster here with Shirley Ritter, Nancy Nichols, Megan Monahan. First and foremost, I do want to just acknowledge and thank Shirley. As you know, Shirley's been at the helm of Kids First for 25 years. In addition to all she's done for the families and children of this community, Shirley's been an advocate for early childhood education on a regional and a state level as well. Some of you were able to make the retirement party earlier today, and Shirley's going to be working on with the leadership transition. We put together a transition plan, and she'll be with us until November 18th. And then and as of tomorrow, the reins officially pass to Nancy and Megan, and we'll still have Shirley here as our safety net. And so Shirley's sitting here because, like Richard Pryor, where Shirley's retiring, this is the team here that's going to be implementing, and this mainly here is going to be the team implementing a lot of the budget requests that we're making this evening. So with that, I will, just a reminder that Kids First does a large number of things, including coaching, quality improvement, staff incentives, nurse consulting, mental health counseling, and substitute teaching as well. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Megan.
Hi. Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Thanks for having us. Thanks for having us here with you this afternoon. So I'm going to start with our Compass wins. So these are our top 3 wins. First, our new VIP award program. This really helped us to create partnerships with the childcare providers and teachers, gave the teachers an opportunity to use their experience and education to receive monetary incentives. This supports the council goal of staff retention. Our first round of awards paid out $38,000 to 41 early childhood education staff. And I recently asked some of the teachers what that money meant to them and what they spent that money on. And I actually got a really big stack of them. I'm not going to read all of these, but a couple of the teachers, the reasons that they said that money, the VIP incentive, was so important to them was because they paid doctor bills, they bought winter clothes for their child, paid their mom's hospital bills, paid for rent, food, household essentials. One teacher said that her lifelong dream had always been to move to Colorado, and in moving here, she incurred a lot of debt, and so by getting this award, she got to pay down that debt. So as you can see, this award program is really important and makes a big difference in the lives of teachers, and we plan to continue with that. Our second win is the Early Childhood Intern Teacher Program. We successfully trained a bilingual intern, and she was hired by a local program. So we trained her, she earned her early childhood teacher credential. And she said that the training that she got from us made her feel very confident as a teacher in the classroom. And we're hoping to grow this program and to continue it, making more of an impact, hopefully adding more qualified childcare staff into that workforce pipeline. And our third win is the CNC infant room. So we have an operator. So this is where everybody gets to clap. Yay. So we've signed a lease. She is working with licensing, and she's going to open soon. So congratulations to Dana Ruiz, the new director. And her school is called Little Steps College at CMC Aspen. So that's a huge success. We're really proud of these and other wins this year. As you can see in this photo, we held our first in-person in-service training. So we used to do this annually, and then during COVID, we could only do it virtually. So we got to have our first in-person training, and we had about 85 staff members there, and we had a national presenter from Conscious Discipline. And we just wanted you to be able to see those talented, beautiful teachers. So that's a big win for us. Next, I'm going to share with you our 3 Compass goals and the projects and deliverables for this upcoming year. The first goal is increasing capacity. This includes improving the existing childcare space to meet current and future needs. We're pushing hard to get RFPs for the yellow brick classrooms, and we have had more interest lately. So we recognize that this is a serious crisis, and it is the highest priority. We hear from families on a weekly basis how difficult it is to find childcare. One family in particular that Nancy's been working with, the mom just moved to Aspen for a very high-paying job. They have 3 kids. The 2 older kids came with mom. They're in elementary and middle school. And dad's at home in a different state with the youngest child, and they can't find childcare. So they may not be able to stay. They may have to move away. So we recognize the urgency of this crisis. We have also been planning for the Burlingame Early Child Care Center, and the schematic design portion will be complete in December, and we think that you'll be pleased with the plans that you see at that point in December. Another way that we're working to increase capacity is the waitlist software. So I know we talked about this the last time we met. It will be launched at the end of 22, so December 22, January 23. It'll really help us accurately measure and assess the actual needs for childcare in Pickens County and in the Roaring Fork Valley. It also, it's included in the enhancing communication efforts goal that you'll see in a few slides. Additionally, our board, the Kids First Advisory Board, is working on connections, and they've met with you, with city council members, child care staff and directors, community members, and they've also participated in the local and regional early childhood growth and needs conversations. So all of these projects are aimed at increasing childcare capacity. They address the city values of fiscal health and safe lived-in communities. So as you know, childcare workforce capacity is at a crisis point. So our second goal is to help recruit staff and help programs to retain staff. And we're doing this by providing a wage enhancement bonus. And we need your approval for this. So we need your approval for that. We've also rolled out a hiring bonus of $1,500 for full-time and $750 for part-time teachers for any new hires in the programs in Pitkin County. And of course, we plan to continue our intern program to keep that pipeline of qualified teachers flowing. And then in our in-service, I mentioned in our wins, we conducted a survey of all the early childhood educators who attended. We asked what their most critical needs are. So 72% ranked higher wages or help paying for housing as their greatest need. And when asked how they would spend additional wages, most answered pay rent, pay monthly bills, gas, and food.
Can you tell me again, who did you ask?
Okay, so the photo, can we just go back to the photo, the one before
Right.
that? These teachers.
Yeah.
So we asked them to do a survey. We had a QR code at the in-service.
Yeah.
So they all did the survey, and those were the teachers that we polled.
Great.
Megan, just to clarify too, are these all Pitkin County teachers?
Yes,
So 85 of the 100 teachers in Pitkin County participated in this training this day.
yes.
So we have a significant,
Thanks.
statistically significant
Yeah.
result from that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The survey also showed that wage enhancements would mean that 95% of them would stay in their jobs for another 2 years. So what we really heard from a lot of the teachers is how much they love their jobs. They really love working with young children, and they want to keep doing it, but that pay and benefits don't meet their needs. So
Just a quick clarification. So 95% with that enhancement would like to stay. Do we have a countervailing number of without that enhancement, what that number was?
5% of the educators would probably not stay. Yeah, because
No, we didn't, we actually didn't ask that question, and
Okay.
part of it
I
was.
like, 5 and 95 are the same.
Right, and to be fair, right, is if you ask people, would this help you to be able to stay?
Yeah, I get
Right,
it.
you're more likely to get a positive result. And kudos to the team because, right, they, in less than a week, I think it was 3 days, created the survey, the QR code that people could answer on the phones, and they basically recognized this opportunity and said, here's a group, this is the group we need to talk to.
Okay, so these efforts to strengthen the workforce recruitment and retention will strengthen those partnerships with childcare programs and increase community engagement, as well as boost fiscal health in the community. The last goal that we're presenting today embodies the city values of community engagement and smart customer-focused government. So first, we are working with the Rocky Mountain Early Childhood Council to implement that waitlist software that we were talking about. It's called Bridge Care, which will give us accurate data on families needing childcare, open spaces in childcare, waitlist information, and other program information. It will also be used to support the universal preschool in fall of 2023. So that software that we're implementing is consistent with what the state will require the programs to be using. So this will improve communication efforts locally and regionally, as well as provide actual numbers to support our goal of increasing capacity. Secondly, in the spring, we were awarded a planning grant from the American Rescue Plan and the Department of Early Childhood. And we used that grant to conduct parent interviews, surveys, and phone calls And so that showed that parents in our community, they know there are a lot of resources. They just don't know where or how to find them. So we took that information from the families and we applied for a second grant. And we were recently awarded that grant. It's a Family Strengthening Implementation Grant for $25,000. So we plan to use this funding along with financial commitments from our partners. So Aspen Family Connections, Pickens County, Rocky Mountain Early Childhood Council, and Great Expectations. And we're going to develop and launch a website guide for families. So this will be sort of like a central location for families to get information that they need on childcare, health and wellness, recreation, social opportunities, and that's just a few of the search options. And then our last piece of this is Flux, which is the new financial aid application system, which is going to provide an easy way for families to learn about, apply for, and access childcare financial aid through Kids First, and an easier way for Kids First staff to administer that funding and track data associated with the financial aid. And unless there are questions, I'm going to let Diane and Nancy give you the information you need on the budget.
I have a couple. The slide that you have, strengthen early childhood workforce recruitment and retention. Can we talk about that for one quick second? Where is that? Where are those photos from?
Okay, so that was it was a fair, a job fair that we had at, or we didn't hold the job fair, but it was in Glenwood Springs at the high school.
Uh-huh.
It was called the Glen X Job Fair. So it was for high school students in the region. And so you see Tina Person and Darylyn Karen Cross, and those two beautiful women. They're directors of Wildwood and the school district. And so we set up a table, and you can see in the picture on the right, we had lots of different information on early childhood education.
Yeah.
To help educate and recruit high school students, let them know this is a real career option.
And so what would happen if somebody was interested and they came up to the table and they said, yes, I'm very interested in this. I'm a high school graduate this year. What do we do? Do we offer to pay, Kids First pays tuition to CMC classes that get you certification?
So the two starter classes are actually offered for free by the state now, which is wonderful. 101 and 103, EC 101 and 103 are offered for free. But what we would encourage them to do is come and work as our intern so that we can pay for all the rest of the training and the time that it takes for them to get that training so that then they can qualify as an early childhood teacher.
Okay.
But if they didn't want to come and be our intern, they could go and work as an assistant teacher in one of the local child care programs.
While they're enrolled in the starter classes?
Mm-hmm. And we provide lots of training and support and coaching to those teachers.
Okay. I think that that's a very important part of this, right? The pipeline for new educators in the system. And so I'm just wondering, and I don't want to go into it detail now, but I just want to put on the table if there's something in this that we could be strengthening. For example, if the starter classes are already free, these are people that they have another job, probably. I mean,
Or they're in school.
or they're finishing school. In which case, anyway, there's still difficulties. It's not just the tuition of going to the classes. As you say, we'd like them to be assistants in classrooms, if not do the intern program. And I'm just wondering, and again, not for right now, but as these conversations go on in a future planning, if there's something that strengthens this to encourage and recruit new teachers, not just continuing education teachers, but new teachers into some of the classes, I think that might be somewhere that we want to put some monies and efforts in the future.
That's great. That's a great idea. And I know that Aspen High School does have a program where they have students, I think juniors and seniors, if they have to be 16, but they can take an ECE class, basically, and take one of those classes, 101 or 103, and then possibly get a part-time job in a child care center. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I'll talk more with Sarah. Bounce ideas off of her. Ward?
Yeah, you mentioned that if a candidate is a intern, that they get the additional classes for free. I see a budget item for 2 interns. So are the interns paid positions?
They are.
Okay. And
To
how long
clarify,
does
they're
it?
full-time staffs, fully benefited positions. So we are taking away every financial barrier we can to them completing the degree and being able to essentially fly out of the program, graduate to it into one of our local providers, which we've been successful with.
Yeah, and it's a termed position, so it really is based on however long it takes that person, because someone may come in straight out of high school, someone may come in with some experience, so there are a lot of different paths into early childhood teacher qualifications. So it's a termed position up to a year, but they get all of the city benefits. They get that sign-on bonus of $3,000. So it's very attractive, and it is really hard to find staff right now.
And what's the length of time it takes to complete 101 and 103?
Those are semester-long courses.
Okay. So a candidate could conceivably be an intern for a year and exit with all the credentials they need.
Yes.
Thank you.
Our last intern, it took her about 9 months.
And you only really have capacity to do 2 at a time?
We're actually requesting 2 more in the budget, so it'll be 3 at a time.
Great.
Speaking of which, from a staffing perspective, this is the staffing breakdown for Kids First and obviously the expenses by type. Andrew, did you want to talk to this? I'm seeing that look of consternation.
No consternation on my part. No, just, the main point to take out of this on the expense type is that 39% in the other category is for the enrollment support and other types of financial aid that we provide as an organization, so.
The only other piece on that slide is that 50% of the positions are open right now at Kids First, and this team has been carrying a huge load and continued really focusing on hiring and working with HR on that. But it's tough out there.
Diane, would you just, quality improvement support here is listed as 3 FTEs, and this is for, obviously, next year's budget. How does that relate to last year's? Were those in last year's?
So last year's budget included senior quality improvement coach, the coach and teacher. Megan, have I got that right? And so one of the things that's happening right now as these 2 take over and kind of mostly vacate their positions is that we're figuring out how that suite is going to be filled, but the positions are essentially the same.
Great, thanks.
That was the long answer.
And accurate.
Kids First revenues, obviously, the single most important piece is the sales tax. And as you'll see represented here, given that we got that council provided authorization to move to the 75-25% split of the child care and housing tax, the finance department went ahead and represented that in the budget. And you can see at the part below what the distribution is and then what the incremental increase is to Kids First. Next up. On the expenditure side, really there's no increase in administration. Enrollment support is about a 56% increase, and that is in financial aid. So one of the intentions of this is as this team and even Sarah and I continue to work with the providers and try to get them closer to charging a tuition that actually represents what the cost is, right? No one in town is charging that now. Can Kids First come in and then fill in underneath? And Nancy, I believe the Kids First Financial Aid Committee met, and they want to basically take in some more families that are kind of on the edge.
Yeah, more families kind of in the middle. We seem to have a lot of families on the lower or upper end. And we believe mostly people think that it's a benefit that they may not qualify for. So we're going to work on some new marketing and telling people that everybody needs to apply or everybody needs to look at this because it is a benefit that's available to all families. And for whatever reason, we seem to keep getting applications really on the two ends of the spectrum. We also talked about making some adjustments in the percentages and increasing our range, and that in itself will offer more financial aid to families who are currently getting it as well. So adjusting all those percentages here in the next few months and really working on marketing, talking to families more about coming and filling out applications.
So what that means, council, the current policy over at Kids First is a family income of $150,000 and below for 2 people, 2 children would qualify for some level of financial aid support through the Kids First Fund. The Financial Advisory Board is looking at that cap of 150 to capture some more families, but they're also saying is the amount, so it's a sliding scale, the lower the income, the greater amount. Should that scale have more actual dollars for points on the scale? So just as an example, if we're paying $4, I'm just going to keep this simple, $4 if you're at the 25 percentile and we're only giving you $1 if you're at the 75th percentile, maybe we need to change that to $8 and $2 as a way to, and again, these aren't real numbers for the viewing public. This is just to illustrate my point. So that's what the committee is going back and looking at. The other piece of that is that we're really trying to get the county to get all of their CCAP dollars out. They're still sitting on about $140-ish thousand, as I recall, that they have not distributed yet this year, which is pass-through funds from the state, that if they don't distribute that to the most needy families in the community, then it just gets turned back into the state, and Picken County doesn't benefit from those state tax dollars. So we're trying to get the county to relook at their formula and see if they can push that envelope with the state further.
Yeah, just a point of clarification for me. The tuition is flat rate for all AMIs, but the financial aid is scaled to what the AMI is, at your lower end of the scale qualifies for more financial aid?
So the tuition generally is not consistent from program to program. So I want to be clear with that. So whether it's a flat rate per slot per child age is dependent upon how that program or that business wishes to operate. Kids First does not influence that number in terms of how that price is set. We certainly encourage cost recovery and why we want these programs to know what does it actually cost for what they're providing. They can't really answer that for me in the most part now when I've talked with various directors throughout the county. However, the financial aid does have that AMI component that you're referring to.
So just so I can try to clarify this, if you have, let's say, toddler group in provider A, that the tuition is the same for every toddler in that, so that slides as well?
That's by program. One program might charge $160 a day, another program might charge $95 a day.
But my question was, if everybody in the same program by the same provider in the same age group pays the same rate?
I cannot answer that question about the business practices of those individual providers. What you're asking for is a level of information that we can't guarantee that they don't have any kind of private financial aid. Because I can think over at like Country Day or Wildwood, they probably have additional financial aid resources beyond the governmental ones that they might use to subsidize daily rates for certain folks. Yeah, okay. So yeah, we cannot answer that question for you, Ward, with any confidence.
Just a quick clarification. So when someone, A, applies for financial aid and B, is awarded financial aid, that whole process is totally private and confidential? Okay, just making sure.
And the
Sometimes there's
payment.
reasons people don't
yeah.
apply for things and because it's, you know.
And to clarify, the payment goes to the provider directly. We don't want to pay it to the families because it becomes taxable revenue for them, taxable income. And so that's why, to get the most bang for the dollar, we issue it directly to the provider to keep, and it's credited to the account of the recipient. So the providers are aware of who's receiving kids aid, which of their students are receiving financial aid through Kids First.
Just a last data point, Shirley had shared with me some data earlier this year on the cost burden of childcare. And in Pickens County, it's estimated that family of four that Sarah illustrated is estimated about 23% of their total income is going to childcare. And if you think about housing costs on top of that, there's not much left for other things. Why don't we go to the next slide? I think this is probably the most interesting one. In this one is the request for supplementals, and these are really the asks of City Council. City Council's already said, go ahead and do the 75-25, and where we'd like to apply that funding is to wage enhancement, to interns, hiring bonuses, which that program is in place. And at the picnic today, Nancy went and got a check for one of the hiring new teachers and the hiring bonus. It was good to see. And then management and support grants, and you've heard about that on September 19th, including things like additional support for directors in education. Foregone revenue, that is specifically to the waiving the rent at the Yellow Brick, which is the staff recommendation. The Kids First Board has a little bit more conservative approach to that, but that's what we'd recommend. And utilities and trash still being paid by leaseholders, and that's exclusively to make sure that they have an incentive to conserve energy and manage their waste stream. The box at the bottom, that points out what's actually in the budget book.
Yeah, so those amounts are in the supplement, they're in the budget numbers. This budget had to be published and came to y'all before some of this other stuff happened after your meeting on the 19th. And so these changes up here are either not in the budget numbers yet, or they've been slightly adjusted. You know, the new teacher hiring bonus is recommended at 45, but it's only 30 in the budget. So depending on how this council decides to move forward, we would make those adjustments at that time.
You want me to start this? So this is really good for people that have programs that are in the Yellow Brick. I want to see other providers in the city of Aspen to benefit as well. So if that means that we have to put more wage enhancement for other programs that are not in the Yellow Brick, I would favor that as well, because the crisis isn't just on the Yellow Brick. Our council has defined accessibility and capacity of childcare as a top 3-tier goal, and we're dedicated to that. How we get there is you guys come up with it. We're supportive of it, but I don't want it just to be focused on the Yellow Brick. For me, the number one priority is to get full enrollment and full utilization of the Yellow Brick, all of those classrooms. And these will certainly help with that. Not paying rent on a new program should certainly help. But with the, I don't believe in trickle-down economics. I want to make sure that the money that is being, the foregone revenue is passed along to the providers, that it just doesn't go in a profit column. So that's my only concern with the free rent, basically. But I support everything on here our fund balance, I think, Kids First fund balance opens at $6.9 million. I would rather put on hold Burlingame 3 until we get, number one focus is get the Yellow Brick fully operational, fully enrolled, and financially viable for the providers. But I don't want to just stop at Yellow Brick. I want it to be available to other providers in Aspen.
And Ward, I'm glad you brought up the piece about the foregone revenue and rent. One of the stipulations that Shirley discussed on the 19th, and we've talked to the providers about in the Yellow Brick, is that those funds would need to be used for the benefit of the teachers or the benefit of the teachers and the director. So, for example, we talked to one provider who said immediately would put it into healthcare premiums. It's much more than what they would receive in rent is what they pay in healthcare premiums.
Yeah, so I think our common goal, whether it's, I know this council, but hopefully the county as well, is to get fully functioning childcare programs and that it's a financially viable occupation for kiddo care providers. And the first 3 or 4 years of childhood development, it sets for the rest of their lives. It's the most important time in a person's life is learning neuroplasticity at that age, is so that it's so important that we support early childhood education. And there might be only a few families for 3 years that get it, but those are a few families' children's life for the rest of their 80 years or more. So I'm 100% behind this, and if we have to do more, I'm open for that as well.
Did you have a comment?
I had a question. It's a large supplemental request coming in. It's, as I understand it, in response to a really kind of crisis moment for a lot of organizations that we want to be successful. Can you speak to, kind of from your perspective, how much of this is a sort of one-time expenditure to get through this crisis moment? How much do we expect to be ongoing, or, where and how we'll figure that out as we go?
So one of the key things here is that if council gives us the nod that they can support this funding request, it gives us an opportunity to sit down first with our providers inside the city limits and work on designing a program that makes sense for them as quite frankly, the top priority to ensure that we keep child care providers within the city limits. And that, for me, we've floated this, is that at some point those funds, that cost has to be absorbed back in by those departments and in their tuition. I can see this even being somewhere between 8 and 10 years for that fully to happen. But the thing is the expense for Kids First doesn't go down going forward, because what we end up doing is making it up by increasing our financial aid on the back end. So what we're saying is more families are seeing the true cost of care. If they're unable to pay the true cost of care, we're increasing the financial aid eligibility on the back end. So I see the expense continuing going forward for some time. However, it's again about getting that true cost of service truly identified in these providers' books.
Does make sense.
Thank you. Sure.
No questions. I just wanted to say, when we set our 3 main goals as a council, housing, childcare, and greenhouse gases, I didn't really realize, I knew childcare was a local problem, but I didn't really realize it's actually a national problem. And so, because it's one of our top 3 goals, I fully support all this. I have a daughter who, well, we went through the struggle of finding childcare here in town, and I know how difficult it is. And my daughter attended childcare at the Yellow Brick, and I know how important that is. So, fully support all of this, and thanks for all the hard work.
Thanks, Sean. We'll come back to this. We have more to fill out on this. Support right now for the direction this is going is there.
So just so coming back, you're scheduled in December for a childcare update, and that's where we would start to bring you a framework for implementation of some of these are really easy to do. New hire teacher bonus, we're increasing the dollar amount available and making sure we have the funds because there's so much churn right now so that those resources are available. Management and support grants, those are new for us, and we're still feeling out a little bit about a potential vendor who we think could provide that service. We also have some partnership opportunities on that one with the Community Foundation that we're having a little bit of exploratory conversation on. The early childhood education interns, I want to hire them immediately. Start advertising to be getting folks thinking about applying for those roles. I think the 600,000, I would want to bring back to you sort of a phased. Again, I want to focus on our city limits first and making sure we design a program that keeps programs supported inside our city limits, and then we can talk about, because only about a third of the teachers in childcare in Pickens County are actually serving inside our community's boundaries. The other 2/3 are outside of the boundaries. And I think we need to recognize that there's some pretty big socioeconomic differences between those schools and how we might approach wage enhancement between them.
Okay. More?
I can wait till the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, council, for your time today, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the yellow brick building. Our major capital project is redoing these 2 entrances. You can see the great pictures. And I want to win the pictures because these are the best ones here.
By the way, I did tell them all that there was a little competition going on for the best pictures as a
don't know how to
motivator for
break
them to
it to
think
you.
through what they were doing in their slides.
I don't know if Rusty Stairs are competing with the
Yeah,
kids.
I think these could be judged on a different level.
Sort of
Maybe
experiential
need
arts.
or something like that.
What's the mood board?
Anyways, what we would like to do is replace these 2 entrances, mostly just for health and safety, and they look terrible. We're not asking for funds to do anything different. We are simply going to take out what's there, put in new, and make sure it's safe for people to come and go from the building. That's our goal here. This is a big asset, and we want to make sure that we're taking care of it. And this is obviously something that we need to take care of. And then our second project, again, I'll remind you that we didn't put pictures here because in the past we had some sewer pipe pictures here and they weren't well received. But anyways, we want to move ahead with, we've done half the building, cleaning out the sewer pipes and all the piping from there, which is the original piping, lining it with plastic inside so that basically new pipes are being built inside the old pipes. And we did the east end of the building, and we'd like to do the west end of the building sometime next spring, making sure that the plumbing will continue to be solid and available for the building for a long time to come. And then our third project under the capital maintenance is just exterior maintenance of the building. We don't foresee this being a huge project, but always with a brick building, you want to look at the mortar and all those kinds of pieces of it, the eaves. And so it's just going to be available to use as we get time to look at the exterior of the building and make sure that it's structurally sound.
So the one thing I want to note on the stairs project, it does not include snow melts. Following previous council discussions, we just want to confirm if that's still the case, that you would want us to leave snow melt out of something like this. Of course, and if you want snow melt, we're going to ask for more money to finance it.
I mean, I sort of still feel like I don't understand the real world comparative analysis of labor, where that labor comes from, how far they drive versus CO2 emissions and upfront costs. And I know we're kind of going to be studying that
It's
here.
getting way more expensive for the labor
Yeah.
than the snow melt. So it's really more of a philosophical view than it is a financial question I'm posing to you.
But when it's philosophical, it's generally, I won't speak for everyone, based on environmental concerns. And so energy use in that versus if that individual is driving from Rifle every day in a 1970s diesel truck, like, I don't feel like I have enough information there yet. And I know we're kind of studying that in City Hall now, but I guess we have to do this sooner than that.
That's not really, though, what I'm asking here. Is just, I'm asking if, knowing that you have a lot of young people, you have people carrying babies and carriers up and down these stairs in the winter. This is an opportunity for the first time in the next 30 to 50 years to add snowmelt to these stairs. Do you want to do it? You did it out here, in the grand staircase for safety reasons. And is that something you want us to contemplate at this location as well?
How old is the boiler? Is the boiler natural gas? I thought we just replaced it
They're brand
recently.
new.
Got those new fancy ones.
95% efficient natural gas. Is that where the power would be coming? Would it be circulating water through those steps? What would be the energy?
We would just come back to you if you want that level of detail. Otherwise, we just put it in spring supplemental for the dollar amount, and we would use what you approved out here on the grand staircase as sort of a benchmark location for us.
So my other question is, if you're talking snowmelt, we're talking increasing the use of a snowmelt substance. Is that an option here? That'd be ongoing, but so when you say snowmelt, we're talking two options, either putting a chemical down or actually a thermal removal via some.
Right, I'm asking thermal. There's already, the chemical option already exists, and it's just a matter of making sure we properly seal the concrete so that it is not damaged by the use of those chemicals. And there's an environmental component to it, but this is super small in terms of square footage. So,
Do you guys want more information?
Yeah, I would, now's a chance to put it in if we're going to put it in.
Exactly, that's what Sarah's
I
saying.
think we'd like more information. It'd be great if there were some other alternatives there. Recently, there's been talk about solar and electric, but the load that it needs for that has not proven to be efficient. But I'm willing to entertain it. I mean, none of us are fans of snowmelt for a variety of reasons, but you're talking about certain applications that warrant it more than others, so can we get more information?
sure, we'll bring it back to you as the project moves forward as part of the spring conversation.
Yeah, I agree. A year ago, I would have been a flat no, but with labor costs and people driving up and down the valley, I don't know what the right answer is.
Okay. All right.
Is this on the city grid or Holy Cross?
This is city. Yep, we intimately know the grid in this area. There's enhancements and improvements that have been made in this circuit, pretty significant ones about 2 years ago, right? Was it just 2 years ago? Oh, and the ones, well, right now you're pulling new line, but the red brick substation or transfer station 2 was done about 2 years ago that this building should be on. Yeah, okay. I'm looking for the expert back there to tell me if I'm wrong. Okay.
I was going to ask Tyler's opinion.
So the supplemental is the big one here, and that's it.
All right. Sarah, this is very comprehensive looking forward. It also has some actions for immediacy. We've had some other conversations that deal with some actions this year and ELC as well, specific. Do you want to touch on those at all now, or is that for another budget?
I'm presenting to you as action item on your council agenda next week to consider for both Health and Human Services and Early Childhood Education, using some one-time dollars to address inflationary impacts they're dealing with. We're finding from my conversations with several health and human service providers is not only they're dealing with the inflationary cost of wages, goods and services and transportation, they're also, their clients are, and so their client base is expanding. And it's expanding at an unsustainable rate right now. And these are generally folks within Pickens County. The example I'll use is the food pantry has seen a 35% increase in utilization in the last 6 months in Pickens County. And that's not necessarily a sustainable situation with them with their current grant from the city of $10,000. And we should be contemplating, is there a way, I'm asking the council to contemplate, is there a way that you're willing to push out some money by the end of this fiscal year to help firm up those books so we're not having these nonprofits in potential jeopardy. The other thing we'll look at is that the Community Foundation just finished up their quarterly grant release, and we'll take a look at who they were awarding to. And Valerie and I have been talking about Valerie over at Community Foundation and I have been talking about what is it that they're hearing as well from these providers, which is just reinforced to me that there's some need for some immediate support to deal with the crisis while they try figuring out their 2023 budgets.
Any questions?
Thoughts?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you guys for all this. Hopefully you guys didn't watch our whole meeting last night, but if you did, Tori made some comments with our transportation team, just kind of mentioning that, I think really eloquent comments that, other than this board, that team probably got the most sort of impassioned comment from citizens over the last year. But I think, this team is really a close third. And I just want to recognize that and just to say, in my view, this council gave clear but very blunt instrumentation and direction to this team last year. We said, make the Michelangelo, but here's a sledgehammer. And that's on us. That's not on you. And when I look at this work plan going forward, I am impressed that even in a difficult period, this team was able to really listen, to dive in, to work with educators, parents, and kind of hand us back the scalpel and say, maybe this is a better way forward. And so I just really appreciate your ability to do that, and it gives me great confidence moving forward, knowing we can continue to get better towards the goals that we all share for our community. And as Ward said, every kid everywhere deserves to have the absolute best education. We're just in Aspen, so we get to focus on that, and by extension, Pickens County. And so, in our bubble, let's make sure we do that. And I fully support the supplemental, but I'll also say, we at this table, this organization cannot solve this problem in perpetuity by ourselves. It won't work. Again, as Ward said, childcare is in crisis everywhere. This is not just an Aspen problem, and what we're learning is we kind of really don't know what the problem is just yet. But this supplemental lets us get under the hood together and really figure it out first at the yellow brick city and then out. And I think that's the right approach. But as we look forward, we've already seen private citizens even show up at meetings, which is awesome. It's going to have to be an all hands on deck. And so I'm eager to see us all work together to make sure we get the outcomes we want. So thank you.
Thanks, Gibby. Comments, questions, suggestions?
Great work, team.
Sarah, more information?
So the final thing that you did not see in here for 2023 is moving into design development on the BG3 facility. I know there's been an interest in being able to be ready to compete for grants. The conundrum that you will find yourselves in December is that our project, without moving into construction drawing phase, has much less likely to be competitive in state and federal grant making opportunities. And so you'll have to be faced with the question whether you want to use fund balance to go ahead and move forward. Again, it's preparing the drawings. It's not actual construction. But I don't need direction tonight, but I want you to know in December, you're going to have to make that decision about foregoing those grant opportunities or spending some money, which is probably the tune of about $1 million, to get to construction drawings on that facility in order to compete more, to be in a competitive position in those state and federal grant opportunities.
Is it around December?
You have that work sessions December, anybody remember? 6th?
25th, perhaps?
Yeah.
I hope it's not on December 25th.
I only ask.
I won't be there.
Christmas Day? Is
I
it?
apologize. It's sometime in the first 2 weeks, because I said after December 19th, we should have no council meetings for the sanity of all of us trying to manage town.
No argument there. No, I only ask because it sounds like it's in about the same areas when we're expecting to have the waitlist system set up in that, and I think that'll be a good leading indicator that'll give us some good information about, how much foot we want in the door.
Waitlist is end of December, beginning of January, and remember, that's the kickoff, so it's going to be a little bit after that.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
so you're not going to have that data when it's time to make this decision. It's going to be, CDs have to be done at some time. The cost of getting CDs done and delayed are just going to go up. So do you want to use some of that fund balance and its buying power now, or do you want to delay that into the future? It's economics at that point, about do you spend the money now where it has greater value than the money that in 5 years the dollar won't be worth as much with what's happening, and in turn knowing that you will need to you need those drawings to be able to be competitive in these grants.
is there anything we could do with even a smaller dollar lever to get that data sooner so we would have it at that decision point?
No, because our community partner who's helping us with it, so that it is a regional system, not an Aspen-centric system, needs that time to do it well and successfully launch it. So we had hoped to have this done this month, but instead have agreed to wait a little longer for a regional valley solution rather than an Aspen-centric solution.
Special meeting on Christmas? Just kidding.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on that. I think it's important to finish the schematic drawings. I want to see a victory here with the yellow brick. I want to show the community that we are making progress. I want to quantify what the need is. I want to be competitive for any grant dollars that are coming up. So when we meet in December, I'd like to have an idea of how far along towards construction drawings, or how far along the process we need to be competitive. Do we have to have a shovel-ready project?
The shovel-ready will be the most competitive, which means you need to get to 90% CDs, and that'll cost you about $1 million. Yeah.
Yeah, I want the success from the yellow brick first.
So again, don't need direction on that tonight. I just want you to know this is a big decision you have coming up in December, that you're going to have to weigh that, and we'll bring that all back to you in a much more, Jennifer will present all of that to you, both in memo and in presentation, for you to give us your direction of how you want to go forward, because you will have to make a decision in absence of the complete information that you would like to have.
For me, for that, I'll be interested to know what the grant opportunities are, what those dollar amounts are, construction costs as well. And as I've shared most recently, I still question whether the Burlingame location is the best location. So I'll be having that conversation when we get to December. I want to say just a few things before we let you guys go. Number one, I appreciate Skippy's comments a moment ago. This has been an evolving situation over the last couple of years, and by evolving, I mean changing rapidly. Even this conversation that we're having tonight had new information come to it just last week. With county participation, and they still haven't settled in on what their program is, but we have a lot of information that's still yet to come to us. Communication and collaboration with the county on a countywide program, if we can get there, when we can get there, I should say, starting with the city first. We have other information coming back to us, Sarah, that you were saying around the supplementals, both for next year, but also what you're coming to us with next week for this year. I want to be clear that, for any of the missteps or situations that we find ourselves in now, this council accepts full responsibility. And we really commend, again, as Skippy said very well, we commend the work that everybody has done on behalf of the city. And that goes for Kids First staff, Kids First board, as Skippy said, the others, the providers, the parents, et cetera. So I think we're in a great place moving forward. Sarah, I really thank you for your pivot as well on looking at the opportunities, both in changing that split in the tax, but also how you're going to implement these. And we look forward to that information coming forward in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So again, as Skippy said, and I really appreciate you putting those on words, thank you all for your work. Thank you for your work. And council members, thank you for, of course, your continued attention to this top 3 priority for not just us, for our community. So with that.
And Shirley, thank you for your decades of service to this valley and this area. This is her last public meeting on this topic.
You're very welcome. And I appreciate all the folks, including some of you that were at the retirement party in the park today. It was a beautiful day, and it was great to see everybody and to bring people together. And I really think that's what we're about, you know? So I hope that continues, and I know it will with Nancy and Megan. So thank you.
Right on.
Shirley, I'll just add that I know Rachel would have been there, but she had family obligations.
Thank you. I'll catch up with her, I promise.
Are there leftover cupcakes?
Yeah, I don't expect everybody to, but Shirley, I give you a standing ovation.
Now get out of here.
All right, thank you guys for the work on this proposed budget, and we will see you very soon. Got more work to do still.
It's cold in here.
Thank you.
You are?
You're nipply, but I'm.
I am very, might have to get a jacket. I might have to Rachel it. Oh, yeah. Now make sure you take those out of the bag. Hell yeah. Sweet. When I get a jacket, I'll refill us.
I'm gonna be good. These are amazing. All right. Moving on.
He's bought props
Those of
for
you
the water
scoring at
department.
home, Kids First 1, utilities, up in the bottom of the first.
Bottom of the first.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I'm Tyler Christoff, Director of Utilities. I also am joined by a few of my staff members that were really instrumental in creating the utility budget here. So behind me, I have both Andy Rosello and Aaron Laughlin, part of our capital project team. I have Justin Foreman, who is our operations manager, and Cole Langford, who is our business services manager with the utility. So just a couple kind of housekeeping items tonight before we get into the budget. You're going to see a number of slides from us tonight. It's perhaps more detailed than council typically sees from departments, but we really feel strongly that this is the type of detail and transparency that's needed at the council table because we really understand that our rates, our infrastructure, and our services really impact the community. You'll also see in your packet tonight a pretty detailed memo outlining the rates and proposed changes to Title 25, which dictates our rates and fees on an annual basis. Also like to just remind council that we're going to review both the water and electric funds this evening, which are both enterprise funds, which means our revenues and expenses must balance. It's different than some of the other funds you've seen throughout the city budget. These two funds share administration and management and kind of have some inherent economies of scale because of that. As council's well aware, our economic picture is really changing, both from an inflationary standpoint, cost of goods and services, and really Aspen's long-term positions through contracts, our staff effectiveness and efficiencies, have allowed us to buck some of the national trends that are really impacting other utilities with large rate increases that we're seeing throughout the nation. So really credit to some of our predecessors and the effectiveness of our staff. We've touched base a couple times in the past year, and some of the biggest drivers are some of the uncertainties we're seeing in the national energy market, the challenges with infrastructure replacement and those cost escalations, and some of the pictures of drought in the arid West. So you'll probably see some of these themes interwoven into our projects, our rates, and some of the discussion tonight, but I just wanted to start with some of those comments. So yeah, we'll dive right in. So obviously, the utility in 2022 has had a successful year serving our community. Wanted to touch on a few highlights or compass wins here. Obviously, our advanced metering infrastructure project has been a huge change for the utility and for our customers. This is providing smart metering to all of our customers. We are 95% implemented, and this is a great technology that is allowing transparent, accurate information on resource use. It really helps future-proof our utility and bring a service to our customers that is typically only seen in larger utilities. We've also focused, as we've talked a lot about, on infrastructure replacement. So our aging infrastructure throughout town is the infrastructure that is providing water and electric services to our community. By reinvesting in that infrastructure, we're able to ensure that we're ready for the future, that our community enjoys the same level and quality of service that they've enjoyed for multiple generations. And then the last compass win of the last year was continue our approach to cost of service. So this is really creating a stable financial model for the utility. Our revenues must match all of the services we're putting out into the community, and having the rates that support all that we do is very important to a sustainable and resilient utility.
Question on that slide, if I can.
Yes.
Number one, Sarah, do you give every department a professional photographer for a day or something? Is that what's going on here?
So the one on the left.
Who took these? I actually don't know who took these ones.
Just various staff members, actually. I think the one on the left is one of our project management staff. The one in the middle is probably somebody from our distribution group, and the one on the right is from our electric crew.
Right on.
And to be frank with council, I did not think we would get high remarks on our photography, but I'm glad you appreciate that.
You're grading. You're grading. A question for you on the AMI. I saw something about the opt-out. There's some people that don't want these, apparently, and you are able to not have one installed, but you have to pay a fee monthly?
Correct. So it is an industry standard as utilities move towards advanced metering or smart metering that there is an allowance for customers that might not be interested in this technology to opt out. When a customer opts out, it does create a cost and operational burden to the utility that we want to offset by essentially charging that customer for the time, the vehicle, and the technology, the software that supports us manually reading a meter instead of allowing it to go through a network.
And there's no charge to opt in?
Correct.
I don't love this.
I think it's how you get people to switch to the thing that's better for the system.
Yeah, I don't love it.
I love it. I loved it when I first got on council. It was an out-year project, and to see it 95%, both electric and water, I think it's wonderful. It gives us a lot of flexibility. It gives us a lot of data points. I'm fully supportive
Well,
of
I
it.
neither love nor not love it. I mean, at the end of the day, the new technology allows us to be greener, cleaner, more efficient, to reach all of our city goals, and to not do that actually incurs someone driving around in a, at least for now, diesel truck, spending human hours. And so, I mean, it just makes sense to charge for that.
You
And
know,
I appreciate your-
$720 a year for somebody who doesn't want to put in an AMI meter across this. If my fellow council members don't have a problem with it, then I get it. I'm going to voice mine. I don't agree with this.
Is that the monetary difference?
It's $35 a month to start, and then going next year, it's $60 a month to not have a meter put in. And
Yeah, so just to be clear, it'd be, if you opted out, it'd be $35 a month going into the next year. If you do not respond to the utility and don't say I'm opting in or opting out, since we can't contact you, that's the higher amount that you quoted, the 60.
Oh, okay, so if somebody wants to opt out, it's $35 a month, so $400 a year or what have you. I don't know.
So Tori, just one other.
We're being extremely successful. It's being implemented in a lot of places. We only have a few people. This is not, I don't like it.
Sure.
That's all I'm going to share. It doesn't.
I appreciate it. I'll ask you a question, though, just on that. The $35 a month, is that because we have to go and read it every month, and that's like a half hour of time, or?
Yeah, so we're still in the process of implementing this project, so we don't know how many people are going to all in opt out. So we tried to estimate the amount of time that a vehicle, a staff person, and the software would cost spread amongst a number of customers. So $35 is our best guess right now. That's pretty typical. It's a little bit lower than what we see in other utilities. So we tried to produce something for council that we felt like was the most fair and equitable. Not charging these customers would basically require the rest of our customers that are opting into AMI to subsidize these customers that are opting out.
But we do have to read it every month?
Somebody that opted out, yes,
Yeah.
we would read monthly.
Okay.
And they wouldn't, so they also wouldn't have that level of detail that an AMI customer has.
Got it. Okay.
And Tori, I guess the other piece that I would add is, like I said, we're unsure of how many people are going to opt out. We only have a handful right now. So we're hoping that this is not a, like I said, we only have 5% of our customers left that we are still needing to deploy to. So we're hoping this is a very small cross-section of our utility
But the
customers.
less people opt out, the more expensive it gets per person.
Theoretically, yes.
I'm going to bring you a consolation cracker. Get in the jacket.
Oh, good. Yeah, I guess my approach on this would be that I wouldn't necessarily go for an opt-out fee. I would actually just get the program implemented as much as possible and then show the benefits and have those people wanting to opt in. I don't think it needs a penalty, and that's the way I look at it. I look at it as a penalty, and it's just not me. It's just not the way I would do it. But that's just me.
Thanks. So moving on to some of our 2022-23 Compass highlights. One part of the utility is that we're very proud about our ability to serve our customer needs and hopefully exceed their expectations. It's an aspect of our work that our staff really takes a lot of pride in. As a utility, we really focus not only on our human approach, but the ability to provide emerging services to our community. So a couple projects that speak to this, again, the advanced metering infrastructure project, really focusing on project closeout and then customer-facing portal, so allowing our customers to see their use data, their resource use data in real time. Also, some transparency around the other goods and services they are seeing through the utility. So really putting out our drinking water quality report, which is our consumer confidence index, and sharing essentially our report card to the state and feds with our community in a way that's meaningful and hopefully understandable to them. So you'll see that a number of strategic alignment areas that that these touch, I think throughout the utilities functions, we're hitting a lot of the strategic alignment areas that council has identified. Another goal that we're looking at in the next year and really pushing towards is ensuring equitable, inclusive access to our water and electric resources. So, a key function of the utility is to ensure that all members of our community have access to critical resources like water and electric, not only now, but into the future. And we really feel like that's a critical function of us as staff and as the utility. So this effort takes many different forms. It takes the form of future planning, future resource planning, takes the form of policies that we're implementing. It's looking at our rates and making sure our rates are something that are reasonable and serving the community. And it takes the form of our communications back to the community about how we're doing things, how we approach conservation, and how we're allocating resources so they're available to all.
Where are the solar panels?
Those are on the Clearwell up at the water treatment campus.
How much does it provide for you? Does it run that facility?
Not quite, but
Much of it?
yeah, quite a bit of it.
awesome.
I think the month of May, for example, I think we actually tend to produce more than we consume. But we have a lot of energy-intensive pumps in that facility. But, it's a pretty good offset.
I think that's great.
One of the challenge projects I gave the electric utility too is unfortunately our Water Place 1 subdivision is on Holy Cross Energy, not on City of Aspen. And I've asked them to look at what's involved in making that a microgrid and what is the potential to expand this solar field or another portion of the water campus to support that and get the employer-sponsored housing off of what may be coal-based power. So more to come. It wasn't right for this budget season. It needs a lot more work, but they're doing some really innovative thinking up in this department about how to support those goals. And the reason why we want to look at a microgrid there is we need that neighborhood to run during an emergency. That's a little different because of who lives there during those times. So more to come, but just to let you know, we've really been pushing some of this conversation internally.
And Holy Cross's actions towards renewable portfolio, it's real, right? It's not just offset. They're talking about doing only power purchases from wind or hydro sources.
So they're following a similar model we did prior to 2015. They're trying to find purchase power agreements that fall within the renewable realm and when their carbon-based resources expire or when to retire them and move to these other purchase power agreements or production that they have contracts with.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think they have a large wind power on the Front Range that they've constructed.
Yeah, I believe they're part of a couple wind farms, a couple solar farms on the Front Range. Yeah. So as I mentioned, we're going to hit both the water utility fund and the electric utility. We'll start with the water fund here tonight. I'll let Andrew.
So, in general, the water utility is primarily, the main portion of their budget is dedicated to capital improvement, which we'll see here in a minute. They have a number of large capital projects that they're working on. The remainder is primarily either overhead and allocations and then personnel services. Moving on to their revenues, we'll just touch on this slightly. Then we're going to have some discussion on the cost of service methodology and any rate changes that they'd like to propose. Primarily, though, this group has about 5 main sources of income, mostly related to providing service, and then some small amount dedicated to development review, and then, of course, tap fees for when we need to put in new infrastructure at private addresses.
So I believe council's pretty well familiar with our cost of service methodology. We've been working through this process for 5 years, so it's been kind of an incremental transition. And we really, this methodology is trying to tie the cost of the utility doing business to the actual cost it takes to deliver that service to a customer. And really, this is, we feel like this is the most fair and defensible rate structure out there, and something that's very common in the municipal utility realm. As I mentioned, we believe the incremental approach provides the most customer-sensitive methodology to move our rates forward, while it still addresses the increasing costs and complexities of our operations. And I think we'll be able to demonstrate to council that even with these changes, we're hopefully providing a lot of value to our community through these utility dollars. So the next few slides here are our attempt, sorry.
Can I just one question?
Yeah.
I thought that the initial plan that we had seen years back was like a 4-year transition. So year 5 would be the first year where we're sort of completely at the new rate structure. Is that accurate?
No, so it's always been a 5-year. So this is the last year, and council may remember that in I think it was in August, we came to you with a contract for our next 5 years of rate study to make sure that we're on the right track and sitting where we need to be from a revenue standpoint to match our expenditures. So while we had this 5-year incremental approach, this is a constant practice within the utility to make sure that we have a resilient financial model. So this is the last year of this cost of service transition. I believe it was 2018 that we worked with a rate consultant and developed this incremental 5-year approach.
But minus new findings this year, will 6-year mirror 5-year, or will that'll be the last year of change?
So next budget year, we will have undergone a whole new rate analysis with new market factors, et cetera. So I can't really tell you what that's going to look like yet.
Okay.
But there is the potential that there is no rate increase for the 2024. It's potential.
There is always that potential for sure. However, I would caution council and the community that based on the economic climate we have and the inflationary pressures we're seeing, that would be fairly unlikely unless something changes in the marketplace. It's just, the cost of everything is changing, and the utility is not immune to that.
But maybe for 1 year, we could maybe.
Yeah, I guess, I'd go back
maybe
to
1 year.
something that I opened with is, like I said, our long-term position and some of the efficiencies we recognize with the quality and experience of our staff have allowed us to buck the trend of the inflationary pressures we're seeing. So instead of 8% or double-digit rate increases, what you're going to see here from us tonight is lower than that, and that's because of some of the strategies we've implemented in the foresight of our predecessors.
I'm sure that'll come through.
Thanks, Tyler.
So the next few slides are our attempt to give council and the community an idea of what these rate adjustments, what impact these rate adjustments might have on various customer classes. So on the water utility side, this is an average residential customer in our downtown core. This is the majority of our customers that are connected to the water utility. So you'll see each component of their bill changes based on that cost of service methodology to give an overall impact on a monthly basis of just a little bit under 6%. So that's about a $4 change for an average customer in the downtown core on a monthly basis. Now, again, this is just our estimate. Different customers have different ECU counts, use different amounts of water, but we tried to pick customers that were represented in the middle of the bell curve, if you will, to give an idea of what an average impact might look like. So this is our residential customer in the downtown core. Our next one, I believe, is a residential customer in a pump zone. So customers that are using our pump and tank infrastructure pay a larger proportional share because that is infrastructure that is serving them and their accounts. So these customers are seeing that additional pump charge on their bill, and that moves up for impact just under 7%. These are typically residents east of town, some in the Buttermilk and Tyhack and Highlands neighborhoods, as well as Red Mountain. This one represents our average commercial customer in the downtown core. That's where we typically see our commercial customers, again, showing a little under a 6% adjustment on rates for next year.
When you say commercial customer, can you give me an idea? Is that
Restaurant or
a
Lululemon?
retail store? Or?
Yeah, that could be a retail store, it could be a restaurant, it could be a hotel. Yeah, any and all of the above.
So you're not seeing a huge difference between, say, restaurant uses or retail uses? Again, you said you try to hit the middle of the bell curve, if you will, but.
Sorry, I guess I didn't follow that question.
I'm just wondering, commercial could, I'm seeing it, wait a minute, I'm sorry. Down the bottom, you have kind of a parameter for it.
Yeah, so more, a commercial account's going to have more ECUs. They're going to use more gallons. Going back to the average residential customer, I think we had 2 and some odd ECUs and 10,000 gallons instead of 100,000 gallons. So significantly more demand, significantly more use on a commercial account is typically what we see. Sorry, I didn't follow you there.
Thank you.
Another part of our fee changes is our tap fees. Our tap fees are a one-time fee assessed to a new customer or an existing customer who is increasing the amount of fixtures they're connecting to the system. So this is really a cost recovery model for our infrastructure, as well as providing that customer with incremental ownership of the water utility. So that 10% increase is in line with generally what we're seeing from a construction cost escalation and goods and materials. So we needed to keep up with that on the tap fee side of things.
What's the new number?
So it's a per ECU amount, and that varies in each billing area. So in billing area 1, that ECU amount is $10,855, and that varies all the way up to $21,710 in other billing areas.
Wow.
And those are very reasonable tap-in fees. I'll tell you, in suburban Ohio, they were higher than that.
Really?
Yes.
So on a scrape and replace where the ECU remains about the same, there's no real tap fee?
So it depends when they redevelop. So a tap fee is credited based on the dollars that an applicant spent. So if they bought their tap fees back in 1980, they probably only paid a few $100s for them, and so they would pay the difference, to keep up with infrastructure. So does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense, but it also doesn't make sense. If somebody already paid tap fees and so they already have water usage, they already have water to the premises, they're not increasing their usage. They're just they're remodeling, or they're not increasing their demand on the system, yet they're going to have to pay a huge tap fee just to rebuild or to add on.
Sure. So typically, that's a very uncommon scenario that we're seeing. Typically, somebody is remodeled or pay tap fees in the modern era, and so the difference in dollar amount, if they're not changing their ECUs, is quite a bit smaller than a full, ECU payment. The other thing we're seeing is that almost never happens where somebody just says, I'm going like for like with fixtures. It's almost always an increase in the amount of demand placed on the system. In fact, I'm not sure I can think of an example that hasn't been.
I'm hoping that with the new building codes, an old building that is scraped and replaced is going to be more efficient than instead of use less water instead of more.
I would hope the efficiency increases, but the number of fixtures does not seem to decrease. I'll put it that way. So the efficiency of an individual fixture gets better as new technology comes along, but generally our community is adding more fixtures as stuff is built.
Oh. Allow me to satiate my curiosity.
Yeah.
Regis has, like, in the spa, the 17 head shower. Is that one tap fee? Is that 17? How does that work?
So we have pretty complex charts within Title 25 that specify an equivalent capacity unit for all different types of fixtures. So a shower head will have one type of fixtures or one type of ECU assessed to it. A steam shower, a toilet, a sink, a water fountain, so it's kind of a formula that's applied. So I couldn't tell you without looking at that shower what that is. Actually, I couldn't tell you. My staff could, but.
It's wild and very enjoyable.
Take your word for it. So yeah, the fixture count is based on what fixtures are actually installed. Okay. And so they'll vary based on what somebody proposes in a residence.
So just a very, high-level discussion of the water, the expenditures for the utility, sort of the important thing is to notice that, we do maintain a 25% targeted reserve, and that the utility does maintain that rate for the next foreseeable years. Primarily, 50%, give or take, is related to the distribution and treatment of water. And then the remaining portion of it is either administrative services or for services that we provide to the community otherwise. And then, that's pretty much kind of an overall summary of what they do.
I think the key thing to take away from this is that about 1/3 of the spending in the water utility is on capital. And the other 2/3 are on operating the system for both raw water, collection, treatment, and distribution. And that's really the key thing I would encourage you to focus in on as we've continued to address the capital issues here. I'd actually love to move the capital program more quickly in here, but we have some limitations on contractor availability and staff capacity. Both of those have to increase at the same time in order to deliver the project. So we'll continue to monitor if that situation becomes better for us to be able to move some of this capital more quickly.
We have a supplemental request that is mirrored in both utilities. This is an ongoing funding for software. This is our Munis CIS software is our customer repository. It allows us to manage billing and tracking of all the utility accounts within the city. And this is split between the water and electric fund. Our previous software vendor, it is actually the same vendor, we had that software for 15, almost 20 years. So as you can imagine, it was kind of getting antiquated, and we needed to update to keep up with not only needs in real time, but also future needs, and to be able to pair with our AMI system. So this is a map of our major capital projects for 2023. It's probably a little hard to read on that screen, but I think it shows some of the geographic variability of where these projects occur throughout town. Really thematically, this is really focused on infrastructure renewal, making sure that our assets are in good working order and able to provide that service to our community. So we'll go into a handful of project slides here. Some of these are some concepts that council, I believe, has seen in the past. So I'm going to breeze through, but please feel free to stop me if you have any questions.
Just similar to the engineering last night, that map is actually in your budget book if you want to have a more detailed view of it.
So our first large capital project is a pipe rehabilitation project. This is critical infrastructure that serves not only our water treatment, but our local hydroelectric production. We're looking at ways to use traditional construction techniques, but also in situ, so in-place lining and joint repair to minimize the damage and minimize costs to the community. But absolutely critical infrastructure that is providing that raw water service to our treatment plants to then provide that water to the community. Also have some capital projects around our water treatment campus. This is relating to modernizing our material handling needed for our water treatment process and to continue to meet state and federal regs with water disinfection and water treatment process. So really modernizing those operations up at the campus and also including some engineering controls around how our operations staff interacts with that asset.
Great photo.
Thank you.
Now I'm beginning to think you're being funny. It's probably great, I'm sorry.
We're going to really work on that for next year.
No, it's well lit.
Unsplash,
I
just
was sincere.
unsplash.
He laughed, but I was sincere.
Wait, look at the next one. Wow.
Yeah.
This one's my favorite.
This project is around continued planning, design
Damn.
work, and potentially construction and re-permitting of our existing hydroelectric facility and the potential expansion for some more local production. This is really important in our locally produced power portfolio and important in our water rights portfolio on Maroon Creek. This is using existing infrastructure, renewing, and looking to add on to it as well.
And does that include that? I mean, the second bullet point here says interested in adding. Is this adding?
So this is us planning and scoping and beginning initial talks with the appropriate permitting entities to figure out what is possible. This was one of the projects presented to council during a July work session on our renewable portfolio. So this is us putting those wheels into motion to see what's possible.
Excellent.
Tyler, can you just level set for me? 11 to 20 kilowatts power, what does that mean in real terms?
That's a great question. So I think that could be, it's tough in Aspen home numbers, but you know, that's maybe 20 homes, something like that.
1 to 100 homes. Thanks.
By comparison, what's the number at Rudai, just to help them show the magnitude
yeah,
of
I'm
the difference
sorry.
of the two production facilities?
So our existing facility on Maroon Creek is about 400 kW, and our existing facility at Rudai is about 4,000 kW, so 4 megawatts. So, yeah, thanks, Sarah. This is, again, some updates and modernization of material handling associated with our water treatment process. So obviously, some of the chemicals that are being added to our water, providing appropriate engineering controls for our operators and updating equipment that has been in operation for probably 40-plus years. This project is really system hardening that allows us to be more prepared for an extended outage or a natural disaster within our city. It's really addressing a identified system vulnerability where about 15% of our customers are provided water by pumped means. So in the event of an extended power outage, those pumps are not operational, and 15% of our customers would be out of water for domestic use and for firefighting purposes. So we are incrementally adding backup generation to allow those pump stations, just 6 critical ones out of our whole collection of pump stations to operate and maintain a functional water system during a extreme event.
Quick question on that. How much fuel do these generate, do they store? How long can they run?
So these generation facilities are connected to the natural gas system.
Okay.
And so during an outage, the natural gas system, in theory, is as self-sustaining as they can generate pressure pumps with their own resources.
Got it.
On another subject, in the occasional event where both Castle Creek and Maroon Creek are affected by avalanche, how long does the city have the capacity to flush toilets?
Which week?
Yeah, exactly. So it really depends. Our demand in town varies enormously. So today, we are probably somewhere around 3 to 4 million gallons of water use in a day. In that scenario, we could last maybe a couple days. If we were in peak summer demand, we would probably last only about 12 hours.
I don't think we have a danger of an avalanche in peak summer demand.
Hopefully not.
Winter.
You ate
Hopefully not.
recently, Ward.
Right, but if you look at if the avalanche season, right, it's going to be that March spring break timeframe. It can be when we have these larger events, competitions in town. And so there is definitely a correlation, just some spikes to when we have those types of events happening in the community, whether it's for additional snow production for those events, or if it's consumption for visitation and their support services, more laundry, more dishes happening. So if you ever want to see, we have really good data that shows day-by-day consumption in our community. It's a very valuable data set for us in predicting what's going to happen when these events occur. The reality is that we don't have a good plan if that actually happens. We got very nervous 2 years ago. Well, I guess it's 3 years ago. Was it? 2020 now.
Big.
It was 2020 because we were in the, I can't remember. I was recovering from a knee surgery.
2019.
2019.
The big
When that happened, right? When we had those 2 weeks of constant avalanches. And what the good thing that came from that is much better coordination with Ski Patrol at Highlands to understand the potential they have to impact the delivery of these services with how they choose to handle inbound and out of bound man-made avalanche use. And so they now have a system that they coordinate with to really reduce those risks. The chances of it being natural avalanches of that size on both sides, our biggest issue is if our water intakes were taken out by those avalanches.
Yeah. As Sarah points out, it's a difficult planning scenario to mitigate. It's a natural event. If those natural events occur, it's too dangerous to send staff or equipment into that area. And as you all well know, we don't have any backup storage of water. So whatever's coming out of the creeks goes right to our customers, and we don't really have an intermediate way to mitigate for an event like that. So we've tried to do what we can to speak with other entities in the community that could assist with that or perhaps lessen the impact. And then the rest would be communicating to the community about the reduction in their use and try to slow demand in town until we could resolve the issue.
Your bigger risk is if this infrastructure is in the path of a wildland fire. So if you have a wildland fire coming through that intake infrastructure, and because of the limited supply we have, the likelihood of that reservoir being drained extremely quickly because of people starting sprinkler systems, all of those kinds of things in town in order to protect their assets would likely drain the reservoir, and we would not maintain sufficient water pressure for firefighting activities. That is actually, I would say, a much bigger risk, Ward, than avalanches for us on the water infrastructure
I
side.
think Glenwood, with Grizzly Fire, they had so much sediment that they had to go from the Roaring Fork instead of the Colorado.
Exactly.
Well, they had to completely rebuild their
Switch
whole water
sources.
treatment plant.
Do we have opportunity, or should we be looking at building any protective structures?
So our two intake structures are not in known avalanche areas. The avalanche terrain is generally directly above both intake structures. So the last 3 times in recorded history that I'm aware of that we've had these blockages occur, they've occurred in the same locations, known avalanche paths above our intake structures. And generally, the force of water has worked through those in hours or days and reestablished water. Really, our next order of business once that happens is for staff to kind of mitigate all the debris that's coming into our structures and try to keep that up.
So the damage, you shared some photos of the damage that was done a couple years ago. That was from debris, that wasn't direct from the avalanche, that was debris from the avalanche.
Yeah, it was debris upstream of our structures that flows downriver and enters into our structures. So that requires a lot of hands-on operational work when that occurs, those debris flows.
Well, Sarah points out the higher likelihood of wildfire threat. Is there anything that we can do to protect against that?
So we maintain some really open lines of communication with Aspen Fire as well as the U.S. Forest Service. And we've been chatting about ways to look at fuel mitigation. And then locally with Aspen Fire, there's a very well understood approach, a tactical approach to firefighting that to wildland firefighting that does not include using the Aspen water system. And so, their focus would be on protecting structures and using our water system, but outside of those boundaries, hopefully, in case they would stay away from
Yeah, I was
our potable
thinking more
uses.
along the lines of sediment and in the stream flow.
Yep. So yeah, if a water or if a fire event occurred in our watershed, as it has in some Front Range communities, we would need to change up some of our flocculation chemicals and some of our approach to water treatment, as well as be mindful of when we open and close our head gates. And then we would work with the U.S. Forest Service to try to mitigate debris flows.
And some of the capital projects that have already been described make that much easier for the staff to do.
Correct.
Thank you, Tyler.
Moving on with capital projects, these campus exterior building and road improvements are really asset management projects, keeping our facilities functional, allowing us to continue to serve the community. Most of the structures at the water campus were built in either the 60s or 1980s, so their exteriors and other elements are coming of age, and it's time for us to reinvest into that infrastructure as well. This capital project, steel and cast iron lines are identified infrastructure that is at the end of its design life. We see pretty much the totality of our main failures and leaks on materials that are cast iron or steel. So this is really looking at taking that infrastructure and updating it to ductile iron pipe, which is our standard within our system. About half of our system is either cast or steel, and so that project is a long-term incremental project similar to what you're seeing our progress on the electric side of the utility. We also have a project programmed in that's we call distribution replacement. This is really an opportunistic project that takes advantage of other public and private developments that occur throughout the city. We've been able to use this funding to update some water main infrastructure in the last year in Main Street. So really, it takes advantage of economies of scale of a development project that's already going on, updates our infrastructure, and hopefully minimizes the impact to our community by updating infrastructure when a street is ripped up. We also have some capital projects that focus internally to our water treatment facilities. This is a real crowd pleaser photo, I know.
It sure is. You nailed it.
Yeah.
It makes me
Man.
smile. I mean, I can't help it.
There's a lot going on there.
So our filter material within the treatment plants is at the end of its useful life, along with some of those controls that you can tell are from years gone by. So
Star Wars.
the updates of both the filter material and the controls obviously function to allow our operators to run the plant more efficiently, automate more, and the filter material is at the end of its useful life, so needs to be replaced to maintain state and federal standards.
Or Star Trek and Star Wars.
I think in the original Star Wars, not remastered, none of that. They thought, we'll fly across the galaxy, but the screens will only have one color.
That's
That's
Tom.
I'm glad you guys can
They're
appreciate our.
so far
You're
in,
nailing it, man.
they're so far in the future, beige is back in style.
Totally.
So obviously, both utility funds are very capital heavy, as Sarah mentioned earlier. The renewal and reinvestment in our infrastructure is critical to our ability to operate and function as a utility. We have a number of other projects that touch on different infrastructure updates, different longer-term design projects, replace our fleet, maintain our fire hydrants, purchase new equipment for us, et cetera. I'm happy to answer any questions or go into depth on any of those projects if council's interested.
Kayak course.
That's exactly where my
that's-
eyes went.
Yep.
I'm not gonna lie about it.
Want to know more about that?
So- Okay. So that was the,
Is that the stream down the Hyman Avenue Mall?
No.
it's one of our
It's just the
recreational.
lab, don't worry.
So that was our water funds. Any remaining questions from council on that?
Questions, comments, suggestions? John, we're talking about water?
I had something to say about electricity, but I'll hold off until the end. Water, great job. If you guys haven't done a tour of the Maroon Creek plant,
Oh, it's
highly
amazing.
recommended. Root Eye is, it's cool. It's 10 times bigger, but the Maroon Creek thing is, I think, really cool.
Agreed.
So moving on to electric, we've talked about a lot of the shared resources, both administrative, management, et cetera, that are shared between the two funds. Let Andrew talk a little bit about expense type.
Yeah, so the primary thing on the electric is that you do have a fairly significant capital portion, but the utilities that are listed there is primarily purchase power. So the electric fund typically purchases about, $5.5 million in a variety of different, electricity from a variety of different sources. And that's what makes up the majority, that big utilities portion right there on the budget.
Just to touch on that real quick, as we discussed this summer during our work session, because that's such a large percentage of our budget, that is very impactful to our rates and fees. And so the quarter of our portfolio that we're able to generate locally helps us manage that budget more than some of the increasing costs we're seeing from outside purchase power agreements. So that's why we're investigating other opportunities to generate power locally.
So on the revenue side, it's a lot of different revenues, but primarily broken out into the availability charges. So to have access to the electrical services, the variable service charges, which is what you actually use, and then a variety of other smaller revenue sources. So, variable services makes up the majority of the electric rates that we charge.
And it may show in the next couple graphs, but it's important to point out that the fixed costs of the utility and the variable costs of the utility are about a 50-50 split, where the fixed revenue and the variable revenue, as you can see, are not 50-50, and that creates an inherent instability within the fund that that we're trying to capture as we adjust our rates. So again, on the electric side, same methodology, the cost of service methodology, again, year 5 of that methodology. The next couple slides, again, are our attempt to show that customer impact in each of the different customer classes. So this is a customer, average residential customer in the downtown service territory. You can see on the electric side, we have very modest rate increases, especially compared to the rest of the energy market on the national scale, and as compared to some of the inflationary factors we're seeing. And as I said before, this is really based on kind of our long-term contractual agreements. So you can see that we've moved both the KWH and the availability charge up for an impact of about 1.5% for an average Aspen residential customer. We also have included a customer class that we're terming luxury residential. I don't know if that's the best term or not, but it's some of our customers that have larger square footage homes and a larger electric service. So both their availability charge is more significant than a smaller residential customer, and they tend to use more kilowatt hours in a given month. So the percentage of infrastructure and purchase power that is needed to serve a customer like this is higher than a small average residential customer, and as such, their rate adjustment is a little bit more significant, just under 4%. For 2023.
Maybe high consumption residential.
Perhaps.
Accurate.
Perhaps, yes. We also have a number of other rate classes within the city. Council may remember, I believe it was 2 years ago, we developed an all-electric city affordable housing rate. This rate was intended to address the extra electric use that came from an all-electric home and move those customers through the tiered rate structure, the conservation-based rate structure, more slowly to not unduly penalize their electric use for heating or cooling their home. So this is qualified for affordable housing that is, I believe, meets the 2015 or newer building code. And so these are the rate impacts to that customer class. So you can see a 200 amp service, about 1,500 kilowatt hours per month, and just over 1% increase. We also created a senior rate. So these are members of our community that are on a fixed income. They can qualify through Pickens County Senior Services, and wanted to be sensitive to those residents in the community and provide a cost-effective rate structure for them. So you'll see overall impact just over 1% increase on a monthly basis for a 200 amp service, 700 kilowatt hours a month. And I believe our last two rate classes, we have small commercial here. You can see availability charge and KWH charge move up for an overall impact of just under 2% for a small commercial account. And then we have our next slide is the large commercial account. The large commercial account is also paying a demand charge, and their overall impact is about 3% on a monthly basis.
Could you give me an example of large commercial? I mean, I could make some assumptions, but.
Yeah, large commercial would probably be one of our larger hotels in town.
St. Regis.
Yeah, St. Regis is actually not on our inner service territory, so like Limelight, something like that.
Okay. Thanks.
So similar to the water fund, we have kind of a parallel fee structure like our tap fees. This is the electric community investment fee. It's a fee assessed for new or expanded electric service. And again, it really goes towards the capital that supports the electric utility. So you can see we're proposing an increase of 15% for our smaller services, 100 to 400 amp, and a 20% increase for the 600 amp services. Really what we're trying to do here is to keep up with the inflationary pressures that we're seeing on materials like cable and transformers. And those large service sizes, 600 amp and above, really require larger and more expensive pieces of infrastructure to serve them. So their proportional share is a bit more based on what we're seeing in the marketplace.
We good?
I look like this a lot.
Yeah, just trying to read the room. Moving really quickly onto the expenditure side. What you'll notice over here on the graph is that on the operating budget, almost 2/3 of it is purchase power. On the one previously, it also included the capital part, so that sort of describes the difference there. You know, the utility expenses are pretty much broken out, just sort of at the cost of providing those services. And then there is, again, similar to water, there's a fairly significant capital component that is part of this utilities work to get those things done. One other thing I just point out real quick, and just to keep in mind, is that or was that on the water? Sorry. Never mind. Ignore me. Sorry. I apologize.
We'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, thank you.
We also have a supplemental request on the electric side. The council saw a similar supplemental request last year. I believe it was $300,000 last year. This is really based on the impact of drought. So our most cost-effective wholesale power that is produced and that we purchase is hydroelectric. And so regionally and nationally, the impact of the drought has really reduced the ability of some of those large hydroelectric projects to produce to their full capacity. And so because of that, we've needed to backfill our portfolio with other renewable resources. In this case, it's typically wind. Wind energy is typically contractually more expensive than our hydroelectric. And so we're seeing that as likely an ongoing expense as these large federally operated hydroelectric projects and reservoirs under any hydrologic conditions probably will not fill to an optimal level to operate in a foreseeable future. So we see this as an ongoing supplemental request to change essentially the makeup of our purchase power portfolio.
So the PPA would mean that's represented in purchase power, that's variable. If their hydro drops, we have to pay additional. We're not locked in on a certain amount of power from mean.
So we have a contract with the Western Area Power Authority for a certain amount of electricity. They've told us that their production is down 25 to 35%. Mean has been aware of this. We've been kind of monitoring this throughout the year, and our contracts, our purchase power contracts with Mean are structured so we have a base amount of wind that we buy and then a variable amount of wind that we buy. So we've adjusted that variable amount to make up for whatever shortfalls we have.
So as long as we have continuing drought, we're going to continue to see supplementals?
Most likely, yes. We're also trying to mitigate that, like we discussed this summer, by some options for locally produced power as well.
If you're not aware, there's a good article in today's Colorado Sun about hydropower production being down. Sorry,
showed
very
us.
rarely do I get.
Of course, did he?
Did you just show that and I missed it?
Yeah, he literally did show
Oh,
it.
sorry, I was taking notes.
Oh,
on my-
it's okay.
It was
I
sent
to you,
before
right?
I showed it to him. How could you know?
Okay.
As he does.
Okay, I was going to say, I thought, darn, I finally was ahead of him on one of these.
My RS feed is strong.
We're talking water. John's on it.
It's amazing.
Close down now.
Just as
No one needs
an
Twitter
aside, in Bariloche, they have 5 hydro sources, and 3 of those last year were not producing hydro.
Yikes. That's terrible.
Yes.
Yeah, hydroelectricity is a very strong part of our portfolio, but it does have its limitations, especially in the broader arid West. On a more local scale, we've had better luck with the variability of the hydrograph we've seen locally, but these large reservoirs in the desert that are reliant on the Colorado River are really struggling, and so I think we're going to see that continue, unfortunately. The other supplemental request that you have already seen mirrored on the water side is the Munis cloud-based billing software, the annual support. So it's split evenly between the 2 funds. And again, this is software that's our customer repository and allows us to operate the utility from a billing standpoint. So looking at some of our major capital projects on the electric side, council, I believe, is well aware, and Tori in the last couple council meetings has pointed out that we are in the process in the next 15 years of replacing almost the entirety of our electric grid. So this red brick north to red brick south circuit replacement, very creative naming there, I know, is a continuation of the circuit replacement that we currently have under design. It's really replacing infrastructure in our critical circuits serving the downtown core, replacing that cable system with new cable and conduit system that hopefully will last us the next 30 years. Our current cable is at or beyond its useful life, and so this is very critical to maintain level of service to our customers throughout our grid.
Does new cable like this, do we enjoy some efficiencies? Is there better transmission? Is there better?
You certainly enjoy less outages because there's the less potential for cable failure. I think you probably have some marginal efficiency gains as the insulation and conductor is brand new. Generally, when we compare our purchase power to our power sold, we are very tight as a utility, well run. We're seeing only losses in the couple percent range. A very well run utility would see about 5% losses, and we're well underneath that. So
Thank you and congratulations.
yeah, thank you.
Enjoy
credit to
fewer
staff and-
outages. Do we enjoy the outages in the first place?
We do not.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to enjoy fewer in the future, so.
Yes. This is very similar to what you saw on the water side. Again, an opportunistic project that allows us to update and improve infrastructure in coordination with other development activities that are occurring, minimizes the impact to the public, sees economies of scale, so digging up the street once, essentially. We have a couple other capital projects within the utility fund, really keeping up with our electric metering inventory, purchasing equipment and supplies to operate the utility, and keeping up with the IT component of the utility as well. So that was the overview of the electric fund. Happy to answer any questions on electric.
The one thing I'd like you to address, Tyler, is any utility changes that will happen with the Garmisch Street Stormwater Project, and whether you're far enough along to know whether there'll be utility replacement in conjunction to when the grounds opened up for the stormwater. That was a pretty big conversation last night.
So Garmisch from Maine to,
Going south.
yes. Absolutely. We've been in contact with our engineering department, and we've used the PEPC projects and other stormwater projects to put in conduit associated with our electric circuit replacement. So that is always a goal of ours, to coordinate with any other capital projects that are opening up city right away. Is there one more slide? Is there a slide in here? Okay.
Sorry, I didn't have.
One other thing that,
Actually,
a couple other things that I wanted to mention that are included in your memo and packet that go along with the budget presentation. Thanks, Andrew. Every year on an annual basis, we update our rates and fees as part of the budget process, and these are updated through a ordinance process updating Title 25, so a first reading and a public hearing. We also take this opportunity to look at other pieces of Title 25 to ensure that they are meeting current needs of the public, emerging technologies, and any issues we've seen in the last year, as well as updating our rates. So I just wanted to, these are outlined in the memo, but I just wanted to bring specific attention to a couple of these updates. And Tori has already mentioned one around the advanced metering infrastructure. So we have added a couple components to Title 25 that deal specifically with our advanced metering infrastructure. The fact that we have advanced metering infrastructure, the fact that advanced metering infrastructure is the standard for all of our customers. And then we outline our opt-out program that we've discussed, and the fees associated with either opting out or not complying with having AMI infrastructure at a residence. We also have proposed an update in Title 25 for a cap on ECUs for residential customers. So we really believe utilities provides essential resources to the community. We want to be intentional and create policies that support equitable access and allocation of these finite resources to all of our customers. So we have seen some extraordinary ECU requests come from some of our extraterritorial water users, those users outside of our city limits, and we really wanted to create an intentional expectation around what we thought a reasonable amount of ECUs is to allocate to a residential property. We were able to come to this 4 ECU limit based on where our current customers sit and what we think we can provide into the future. So 4 ECU, about 91% of our customers are served with 4 ECUs or less. So it's really that remaining handful of percentage of customers that have very large homes and very large irrigated areas that probably have not yet complied with our water efficient landscape ordinance that are above that 4 ECU limit. So we really feel like this is a equity policy that's important to implement moving to the future. We think it gives our customers and future development a reasonable expectation, and we feel like that is a fair place to start the conversation. The last piece of updates within Title 25 is really an administrative update, ensuring that delinquent accounts are being paid, and that the utility is really not chasing down tenants, and that's a function of the ownership of a building. So it's just, like I said, administrative cleanup within Title 25, making sure that the utility is not the de facto collection entity for landlords, essentially. So these changes are outlined both in the memo and in the highlighted changes in, I believe it's Exhibit A within your packet. Happy to chat about any of them and open it up to any questions council might have.
Anything? Anything in this end?
Extraterritorial expansion as a growth control tool. Keep that. I don't want to particularly want to expand our territory.
What about the lumberyard?
And Ward, just to be clear, our integrated resource plan that we approved and council adopted about a year ago really specifies a finite area of water system build out. It's really kind of constrained to that urban growth boundary, and we did that very intentionally, and I think based on your comments and other council member comments.
I don't have any questions. I have a wrap-up comment.
Wrap-up comment?
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
I just want to thank our utilities department. I went on a hike with our ComDev director over the weekend up in the Flat Tops, and from the high point of our day, looking north, you could see the stacks of the Hayden coal generating plant and smoke billowing out of it, and the whole valley to the north filled with gray smoke. I mean, you look to the east, the west, the south, blue sky. Up to the north, it was dismal. And so I'm very proud of Aspen, the city of Aspen's utilities department.
Bless you.
Thanks for your work.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
A couple comments from me. I want to dovetail off of what John is saying there. You know, I think this council and our community looks for more opportunities as well. You know, I think of things like microhydro. I think of solar placement, including covered parking solar potentials, things like that. You have this council, and again, I think the community support and continuing to forward those efforts for renewable resources and conservation of the resources that we have here. So if there's ever any ideas or thoughts in that direction, I think that you should always share them with Sarah, of course, first, and then if there's anything that you wanted to come to council with, we would be very receptive to hear anything along those lines. My compliments to you. I've worked with you for a number of years, and I feel like I compliment you at every budget session. And again, this year, your display of your knowledge and your understanding of these issues on all of our, on both of our utilities, but on all sides of those utilities is always really impressive. So I just thank you, Tyler, for the work that you do for the city and the community of Aspen. You're great, but I'm going to stop complimenting you, because I want to compliment some of the members of your team that are behind you. And what's very interesting is this time while you were giving your budget presentation, it's interesting to watch them because
They do stuff back there.
they're actually going through the presentation with you. They are nodding, or we're asking you questions. They're answering them as well. And it really shows to me that you have a great team that is working together, that is invested in what they're doing, that is knowledgeable throughout. And it shows just by their presence and how they are in this meeting. So again, thank you to you guys. and the rest of your team. And if you don't mind passing that on, I speak for all of us at council because I think we all feel this way. I know we all feel this way. So I just want to say thank you, and most of all, thank you to you guys. It's really, this is complicated stuff. It's also, this is, I don't know if cutting edge is the right word, but this is now. These are some of the most relevant topics that we are talking about. This council is extremely aware of not only our infrastructure needs in this community, but also the resource pressures that are out there, not just for us, but for everybody. So this is really a leading edge, I'll say, of some of the work that we do, that we feel we do. And it's because of you all that we feel so much confidence in what you're doing. So thank you so much. And I don't have any further questions. I just appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I certainly couldn't take credit. Besides the folks sitting here behind me, there's about 40 other people that really make the day-to-day operations occur. And I would say that there's some of the most dedicated folks within our community in terms of serving the broader community and their pride and dedication to what they do. So huge credit to them. I'm certainly the one that's either lucky or unlucky enough to be the one talking to you. But really, it's the
Middle of both.
the 40 people that are behind me that really make the day-to-day happen.
And please, if you can, just make sure that they all, recognize our acknowledgement of the great work that they do. And you're right, we don't get to see them all and stuff, but please pass it on to each one that we appreciate the work that they do.
Thank you. That's an excellent compliment. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Tyler, tomorrow night at the Aspen Institute is the first session of our Society Reimagined, and it's on water, so I'd like to invite you
All right.
to attend.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So my recap of where we're at is that the supplemental, we'll just start with Kids First. Kids First supplementals are approved to move forward into the final budget document. We need to come back to you at the December 5th work session with a little more detail on the spending plan, and then we will come back to you. It might be after the new year on the stairs themselves and whether we would, what's the costs of making those snow melted, and what would be our recommendation, whether it's electric or natural gas. Okay, and then I heard for both utility funds that what was presented tonight is able to move forward with no changes or additional information. Okay, great, thank you.
Agreed. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, team.
Thank you.
One more budget session on Monday. We'll do the Wheeler and Red Brick under the Arts and Culture Fund, Parks, Golf Fund, Public Education, and everybody's favorite debt service.
And the wrap-up.
And the
So
wrap-up.
that's the meeting I've told you that will be a long night. We will have dinner for you.
We'll bring the appropriate hat.
Ward doesn't do that anymore, I have to say.
I'm going to start it up again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Closer to 6 and 7.
Okay. Guys, real quickly, this is one of the work sessions that we have that's for board reports and updates. So I want to just start with board reports.
I just have my APSHA meeting that I went over the last time. I can do more detail if you want,
don't
but
need- If what you shared with us was what then no, there's no need.
yeah, I think it was an appropriate level.
Is that a hand up from Lee?
Yeah, but we're past that. We're past what she wanted to comment on.
Did I miss? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think she was, when you're getting into some of the ECU calculations and some of the rate, that's all information.
hand
Lee-
disappeared.
Lee knows this inside and out, so she's joining us from the East Coast.
Thank you, Lee. Hope you're well. We miss you here.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I think it went through that in appropriate detail. Everything
Sorry
that.
about that.
Yeah.
No worries.
No apologies necessary. Good to hear your voice anyhow. Lee, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, and yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to continue working with you guys.
Well, thank you, and we're happy that you're still part of the team here. Where are you right now?
I'm in upstate New York in a little town called Peru. So beautiful area of the country in the Adirondacks.
Well, I hope you had as beautiful a fall and some great colors like we did here in Aspen.
Yeah,
do
sure,
right
sure did. And yeah, thank you for your time and you know, the listening to our presentation.
Thanks, Lee.
All right, take care, everyone.
You
Thank
too.
you. Bye-bye.
You too.
I think upstate New York has even better colors than we do.
It was just starting a couple weeks ago, so it's going to be good.
Yes, you have oak trees,
Yes, we do.
elms, so you
And
get
maple.
reds. And maples.
Reds and
Maples make the
oranges.
deepest red in
Yeah.
the sugar content.
Yeah.
All that APSHA stuff will be coming back, so you guys will hear about it going forward. And I have, or John and I have Nordic Council tomorrow, and I have, I think, Northwest COG. Yeah, and Northwest COG also coming up, so those will come back, but nothing new.
CORE Thursday. CML Thursday night. No.
Oh, and Cast Friday too. Well, I guess it's multiple days. I'm going Friday.
Are you going to the Hotel Colorado dinner?
I'm not going to make it. I'm going to go down to Denver. There is a CML event that I want to attend in Denver.
I'm doing Cast Friday as well. Friday morning.
Isn't there a Thursday afternoon cast?
There is, but I
and
can't make it.
Dinner?
Yeah, there is.
That's when I'm going to.
So I do have an airport update when you're ready as well.
Oh, great. Real quickly, I'll just let you know that Ward and I attended RAFTA last Thursday. You know, we're in budget season there as well, so a majority of it is budget talks, other small items, authorization to submit a grant proposal to DOLA, Affairs Energy and Mineral Impact Assistance Fund, and completion of the maintenance facility, grant request for Operation Center Transit Plaza with local matching funds and the like. I mean, the real news that might have come out of here for me was the budget and just what we're looking at, supporting different first and last mile programs up and down the valley. You know, we're all moving in the same direction. We have a great service. RAFTA's service levels are coming back up for this winter, so we are not seeing the same schedule that impacted so many last year. It's going to be, I would say, 90-some% back in full service. They've made some amendments to some routes to increase the service there, but we are, RAFTA is back in action for the winter. Other than that, again, like I say, budget comes back to us next month, so there'll be some hard and fast things that happen in that, but that's where we
I
are.
think celebration for RAFTA is Roadway Inn purchasing 43 units for workforce housing. I have notes here, 186,000 per unit. So
That deal.
it's a great deal. They're about $4 million in improvements. Yeah, we started to talk about it a little bit last night about Kickstart for first last mile. Basalt Downtowner, I think, is requesting an increase. They have 4 months where they're not using the Downtowner, and that would, and Tori and I received a deck on their usage, and it's been a success for them. Talked about bike share. And again, the Aspen ridership was down 37, the Aspen circulator ridership was down 37%. System-wide is 26%.
System-wide, 26%. Aspen, you know, more than that. And then just to talk a little bit about what Ward's speaking about with the Basalt Connect, right, which is to get from Willits to Basalt and the like. One of the interesting, and what I was emailing Bill Kane, the mayor of Basalt, just for some more information. They ended up sharing it. Ryan ended up sharing it. they're seeing great results with it. It's definitely a transit help. But the aim of my inquiry was really, bless you, really about, how many of those trips, are tied into more transit, so this is where my energy and efforts are trying to go is increasing mass transit ridership. I think we all are in a place where we're believing that first and last mile are maybe the largest roadblock to that. RAFT has done amazing things of keeping fares low, if not even reducing or eliminating fares. So we're not seeing cost barriers as being as impactful as before. So we're really focusing our energies and attention on first and last mile and connectivity, multimodal methods and connectivity.
Do we know if that ridership loss is?
We don't. I already know where you're going. He asked the same question.
Are we going to seek to try to determine?
There's so many factors that could be factoring into it. We don't know.
And RAFT doesn't have that. They don't have the personnel or the measurement tools. And so it would be a costly exercise to maybe do a survey or something of the like, an outreach program to figure that out. But Ward asked the same thing. That was his first line of questioning.
Yeah, and I think Tori's, his questions are aimed at how much of the Basalt Connect is actually used for first and last mile, and how much of it is being used to go to Willis to get groceries and come back. And I think that Tori and I haven't discussed this, but I think a origin and destination study through WeCycle or Connect would be the only way to get that information. But the intent of that Kickstart program, first last mile mobility, is to increase service on the, I think in the future we'll be looking for Carbondale to be doing some kind of a downtowner expansion of WeCycle. But really the RAFT funding for it is to get people to the buses. But it's a benefit to the community even if it is used elsewhere, but the funds coming from RAFT for somebody to go to Willis to get groceries is kind of outside the scope of what the intent is, I think. I don't mean to put words in Tori's mouth.
Yeah, and again, I'm focusing on, like I was speaking in our meeting last night about WeCycle, is it's not about whether there's value to it, whether who should be paying for it. It's really about harnessing it. The Basalt Connect is what's called microtransit. Right? So it's a small van, can transport a couple, 10, 12 people at a time, microtransit. And so I'm really looking at all these as those opportunities. Where are we missing getting that connectivity? So for example, last night's conversation around WeCycle is the same thing. Hey, if somebody's taking a WeCycle from Hunter Creek or Centennial or what have you and coming into, that's great. They're avoiding an automobile trip and even possibly a bus trip. But what I'm wondering is there greater opportunity for WeCycle or the Downtowner or Basalt Connect, whatever it may be, to really be that first last mile in regards to transit? It's very obvious, right? Right now, one of the roadblocks to that is the availability. The reason fixed route works is because you can have so many bodies being served by the same, right? But when we talk first last mile, we're talking about more specific drop off and pickup. But how can we get closer to that? And maybe there's something in it, whether it's downtown or microtransit or WeCycle and the like. So I'm just trying to push all those pieces around and see, where we can make gains. We're different, Aspen's different from the rest of our valley, both in location as it pertains to that bus line. But also when it comes to the intensity of uses here, why people are ahead or use a bus to go that way versus coming this way are different. So I'm just trying to massage around and see what information falls out of the tree.
Are the 43, where are the 43 housing units?
Roadway Inn.
Glenwood Springs.
That's what I'm looking for.
Well, you see most of the employees start
Yeah, the bar's
in Glenwood, so it's a perfect place for it. Plus, it's affordable, yeah.
And to clarify, are those efficiencies or are they full units? No, they're not full units. Thank you.
They had to put, I think, $4 million into improvements to add kitchenettes and to add some facilities to them.
Like a Maralt kind of,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that
Yeah.
RAFTA does a great job, and they did a great job of rescheduling some of their BRT service comes up in the morning, and they don't need the down valley service in the morning, so using some of that rolling stock better.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
And then there is one other thing that could fit into this that we haven't.
You didn't even know he did it.
I've been looking at the long-range schedule. I still don't see the downtowner coming up unless I miss something, but we could expand the downtowner service.
I'll pull up the date while you continue to talk.
We're done.
Good stuff.
Airport.
And tight.
Yeah. I was just going to close it. Cool.
I will check. I know we changed it from the words downtowner to something different.
I didn't see it on the schedule.
Yeah, I'll have to follow up with Shannon because it was there. It was there. Okay, thank you for pointing that out to me. Just want to let you know that the Airport Advisory Committee continues to working through an agreement on what should be the calculation of baseline greenhouse gas emissions from the airport. Historically, in the last few years, the emissions have been around between 80 and 85,000, between 80 and 85,000 metric tons.
Sounds about right.
And by far, it's from aircraft. And
Private.
the ability to influence the choice of fuels on these aircraft is extremely limited. Certainly can make it available, but there's certain things about flight-based operators, choices that come into that too. So anyways, I want to let you know this week we kick off probably clarifying questions on some initial recommendations from staff and the consultant on what should be the baseline. There's some real questions about methodology between some experts in the field and perhaps what has been used in the past, to question if the past calculations have been based on more of a residential building type approach rather than aircraft and airport standards through the FAA. So we're going to dive into that further as well to understand the options of how things are calculated in the future, which might be different than how they've been done in the past. Just want you to be aware, we're not going to get this resolved in one meeting. I see this taking us several meetings.
Sarah, the number that you just said for total emissions, if a plane comes in, lands, does whatever it does, hangs out, parks, takes off again, at what point do the emissions count as ours and then not ours?
Who knows?
Well, I can ask that clarifying question. The calculation includes cruising altitudes, so I anticipate it has to do with all of it, but I can ask that clarifying question in the data.
I'd like to know that.
Along with, and when you say ours, you mean?
Yeah, when does it count towards the total number that we were just given? I've heard mixed stories about, until it touches down on the runway, we don't count the entire flight, and I've heard the opposite. I've just heard a bunch of different stuff, so I want to know how it really works.
And I would be interested for clarification, city of Aspen versus county. I think during our presentations, we saw something about our 5% of our GHG inventory was from the airport or something. City of Aspen. And I know that they have something worked out, but.
Yeah, it's broken down right now into on-airport roads and everything else, basically. So it's going back and I don't know that I can do city and county specifically, but I can tell you on airport property versus off of airport property.
You're kind of in line with what Skippy was saying, Atlantic Aviation announced that they are 100% buying offsets for their operations. So I'd like to know what that's calculated on. I don't know if we can get that kind of information, but.
We can ask what they're doing, because there's a middle of an RFP process. I want to make sure that we don't influence the RFP process with information requests.
I think they're trying to influence it by doing offsets.
Right. Well, I am not on the selection committee. I declined. I did not want to be on the FBO selection committee. I felt like that was not a proper role for me compared to a voting member that's gone through a conversation with the board about who should do that. I'm pretty clear with the county. I just had some differences about how that was established. And so I view my role in the FBO operations very limited, but if the council wants to provide guidance differently, please let me know. I've been really more focused on impacts to the lumberyard and this greenhouse gas emissions component. And lastly, the traffic public transit component has really been the areas I've tried to stay attuned to on behalf of the City of Aspen community's interest with the airport.
That's fine.
I think, the overarching kind of thing there is, Sarah, we're happy that we have a seat at the table. We're happy that you're there. This council and this community is very interested in how, we accept responsibility, how we influence positive change, and, work with the county on moving the airport towards a greener operation. And so, that's in general terms, but that's kind of where we're at. We by no means, blame or fix any assessment or culpability, accountability. We just share in it, and we just want to do whatever we can to participate, because we recognize that it's in large part the city of Aspen that is an attractant for so much air traffic. So that part we accept.
Right, and I think I've told you this stat before, but 86% of the air traffic at the Aspen Airport is general aviation, so private.
Yeah.
So when we worry about employments, yes, the commercial are bringing in more people, but our emissions are much less from the commercial airlines, probably. I can go back and ask for the split on commercial and general aviation.
Yeah, the emissions from the private jets are astronomically high. One question that I think a lot of us get is, why don't we just limit the amount of private jets that can come in? And I think that's an FAA regulation that if it's open, we have to accept them.
That's correct. The airspace is, if the airspace is open, it's open to both commercial and general aviation. And there's been a process of trying to sort of pre-schedule priorities for landing, right? Can we reduce greenhouse gas emissions by saying this 8 minutes or these 14 minutes is your landing zone and nothing else will happen in order to avoid backup delays? But it really became a gamemanship for those slots, and they were not getting used effectively. And so then our airspace would get held up with circulating air traffic. And there's really only two places in the Aspen airspace for circulation. One's right above our town, and the other one's over Old Snowmass. And it's because of the geographical nature of the area is why those are the two safe zones for circling. And so really it is a first come, first serve for landing at the Aspen Airport to deal with that situation. And it's quite frankly more efficient. What I get more concerned about is when there has to be fuel burn off, because flight plans change, and so a plane was fueled up for a certain flight plan, and it's no longer taking that flight plan, and they might have to sit out there for 30 minutes and just burn fuel to reduce their weight load to be able to take off for their new flight. And it is happening at the Aspen Airport. I have residents all the time come to me frustrated with that and asking if I can do anything about it. They're not our choices to influence in terms of directive, but we can certainly express our desire for another alternative than that.
plane was capable of flying with the larger fuel payload, why does it burn it off before taking off? If you had extra gas and decided to take a shorter grocery store trip, why would you do that?
Yeah, landing with the extra weight.
Yes, so maybe one runway had certain conditions that you initially fueled for. The runway now that you've been changed to has different fuel conditions.
see.
And so you can take a heavier load with less fuel to Denver than you can take to LA.
I see.
And you know, where you have to change that up. And LA and Denver have different airport configurations than some of our other direct flight markets. So flying into Chicago is a much shorter runway, if I recall correctly. I'll have to go check, but I'm pretty sure Chicago is a shorter runway than Denver and LA.
Like our new smart meters where you can feed electricity back into the system, are there opportunities to take that fuel back into the tank to refuel someone else?
Well, the fuel's been sold at that point. I don't know the rules for proper fuel handling to allow that to go back into a fuel truck. That's really beyond my expertise.
Yeah, I'm asking you.
We're way beyond my expertise in most of this.
Yeah, that would be an industry kind of question and proposal, you know? I'm not sure that they even have the equipment to do that. I definitely don't think they have the regulations. You would not allow somebody to put fuel into any vehicle, container, airplane, or whatever, and then accept it back out of there because you don't know if it's been contaminated, et cetera, whatever they've got going on. And so that's a big industry.
Interesting.
I think that our being local government's ability to have any kind of control is once they back off or they're off the apron, it's an FAA. Once they're on runways and taxiways, it's FAA. If it's out on the tarmac, if it's close to the terminal, we can have some control over it. But once it's on taxiways, and then it's the FAA's control.
Yeah, I mean, outside of control and influence, I think, you know, the area where we perhaps have agency to set an example is just ownership, right? I mean, if the standard is one by which it looks like we're using way less fuel or burning way less CO2 than we actually are, if we can take ownership of the actual burn and call attention to the problem, then, you know, that's sort of an area where we can start to influence change just through awareness.
Right. Like, this is the first time we've heard of it, I think, of the general public.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
What's going on, there might be room for some change.
It's interesting.
No, I've sat on planes with that happening on commercial flights this year. You have too, Tori? Yeah.
I've been on them with the engines running. I just never realized that was what was going on.
Yeah, I remember Amy Levins at the ASE Vision had a session, and he said, you know, the engines on the jets are efficient. They're tuned for high elevation, and when they're taxiing, there's an opportunity to decrease greenhouse gas by having, say, electric motors in the wheels and an APU to start, auxiliary power unit to start the engines when they're close to takeoff time. But
Well, this reminds me of him, I know he did this work for Walmart with their trucks.
Microphone, John.
Sorry. He said, hey, this is inefficient having the whole truck running when the car's sitting still refrigerating the groceries. Why not have a smaller engine running that can do that instead of, and you know, you take one truck and multiply that times all the Walmart trucks.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing.
yeah, I remember when my daughter was working for RMI, their top two customers were Walmart and the Defense Department.
Interesting.
Right.
So
large
I'll
scale.
continue to keep you updated on what's happening with the emissions baseline, so you have an understanding of what's being measured and how it's being measured. And I'll find out whether the data, at least going forward, can be sliced a little differently beyond just on airport and off airport. If we can actually get some destination information, for example, on the rental car component. Are these people who are renting cars to come into Aspen, or are they renting them and then, you know, we're the first stop on a circuit for them?
You know, it'd be great, just you launching that kind of cooperative survey and information gathering would be helpful in the long run, just to start getting everybody talking. not just on that one issue, but I mean in a greater and broader scheme of things. So,
Mr. True, what is this about? Is there extra things?
We're still on the record, just so you know.
Does our conversation suggest otherwise?
We
He
getting
doesn't
in
want to stalk
trouble?
on the record. He's done. He just wants to listen in person.
All right,
okay.
get out of here.
That's it for me tonight. That's the only board report I have for you.
Okay, thanks. All right, I've got one other that falls under council updates, and it's 10 till 7, so I plan on this taking no more than 9 minutes. We embarked years ago on working agreements and process improvements and rules and regulations, if you will. And I want to bring that back to you because it's just had to sit back burner for a little bit. I want to kind of delineate this in the three areas. One is working agreements. Two is process improvements, if you will, and then 3 would be working together, roles and responsibilities, okay? I just gave you guys the BOCC working agreements. As you can see from it, it was written in 2016, but they visit these each year and the like. That's working agreements. Ward started a draft some time ago, and I went through it a little bit and did some grammaticals or added some verbiage and stuff. So working agreements is something that is right here, right? We can start moving forward with council working agreements, and I just give you the BOCC as an example. But, you know, we'll definitely have our own language. We'll definitely have maybe other bullet points that aren't hit there. So working agreements is one thing, okay? And we have those here as a start, and we're going to keep moving forward with that. We want to get to what you see in front of you, but for the city of Aspen, and put the city of Aspen and this council's take on that, okay? So we will keep working forward on that. The second thing is about process improvements, and I asked Skippy to clarify what he was looking for in working agreements and in this whole process. And so similar to how Ward started working on working agreements, Skippy came back to me really with process improvement and process suggestions. And I'll share those with you, but my point here is that these are two different things. Working agreements is one thing, process improvements are another thing. And so this process improvements is something that I almost look at as having to do with the rules and regulations as adopted by council. Okay, so I think some of this work can inform this work. Sarah has said for years, she's like, hey, at the least, you guys need to update these rules and regulations. They do not coincide with what we're doing. So I can see council working agreements moving forward. I can see process improvements moving forward. And then the third leg of this stool is what I think Sarah brings to the table is, and she has a couple of these down in her office, so anybody, you know, she's ready to.
I think I sent a PDF of that
Yeah, I've
to
read
all
that.
of us.
Yeah, so you guys have access to this. But beyond that, Sarah also has some presentationals that she could share with us that really talk about that relationship. Both us interrelating as a council members and as a team, but also interrelating with Sarah, staff, management, and the like, that I think would be very helpful. So again, I'm just putting these in 3 buckets so that you guys understand that, yes, this work can move forward now, but I think in a little different delineation of how we get there. Sarah and I spoke just yesterday about maybe timing for her in doing that kind of presentation, and we're working on that. So we'll come back to council on timing that's best for that, but what she has is very insightful and really helpful and always a good reminder for us. And when Sarah and I were kind of visiting on this the other day, we talked about, and we reminded each other about 3.5 years ago, when this council got together, we had a retreat. But our retreat was about goals, values, projects, and the like, It really wasn't about how we work and how this council needs to work in relationship to the manager's office and the rest of staff as well. So that's kind of what Sarah can really bring to the table, is that we never really did kind of a real group deeper dive into that roles, responsibilities, and team building. So that's one thing. Tonight, what I wanted to touch on just real quickly was that we made a direct request of Sarah and the organization to get some sort of email tracking. One of the issues that we've had is about the fact that we can't really share our emails with each other because of, whether it's sunshine or open records or whatever you want to call it. It's really just so that we don't have those conversations going on without public knowledge of them, and there's not, in so many cases, there's no heavy topics or anything that's going on behind scenes that we're negotiating or discussing, but nonetheless, because of the rules and regulations, we can't go there. So we have this issue where we get an email in and somebody wants to respond, and they want to respond, but they don't want to send it to the rest, and then they could send it to Jim and say, hey, Jim, will you please send it to the rest of council and all this stuff. Instead, what we want is some kind of clearinghouse, just a way to keep a track of it. Rachel's original kind of suggestion was just old school, a binder. And a binder. That's great, but there's better ways. And what Sarah has been working on is this 311, right? The Aspen communication facilitation of 311. And it was 2 weeks ago, I believe, or last week's Tuesday meeting, that Sarah said, hey, I've got this system that's ready to be in place for you guys, but I still have a couple of questions about protocols for you guys. And what she meant by that was, we have not decided how we want to handle it. So for example, and the example that Sarah shared with me on Monday was that, let's say a citizen sends an email in to city council. The city council email address hits all of us, goes to Sarah, goes, not Jim, maybe Scott or Diane's involved.
Right, it goes to me, Scott, and Diane, so that whomever's acting city manager always gets those messages too.
So that email comes in and it's, dear council, you guys are doing such a great job. I agree with everything that you're doing. And we want to respond. We want to acknowledge that we got their message and encourage them to continue their input, et cetera. So right now, and the example, again, I'll go back to Sarah shared with me. For example, in Park City, I think it was what Sarah said, is that in that case, what would happen is the mayor takes the lead and says, okay, I've received this, so-and-so should respond, or I respond, or what have you. And so the mayor takes the lead and would then decide, hey, council members, don't respond. We're having somebody from staff because this is staff appropriate for detail and stuff. That's one organizational way to do it. What we have been doing is, and what I've encouraged you guys to do is, hey, acknowledge that you received it. Acknowledge their sentiments. Thank them, et cetera, et cetera. I've tried to encourage you not to engage in speaking on behalf of actions of council or council viewpoints in that. But nonetheless, yes, you should respond, right? You don't want to have the incorrect perception that you didn't respond because you didn't receive it or you didn't care or any of that. So responding is important. Anyway, my point is that for us to get this final email communication thing rounded out, Sarah just needs to know what our protocol and managing, handling these is going to be. This was part of what Ward started in his working agreements and part of what I followed up with as well. But we need to bring it back to council for agreement on that process, as we do with all three of these pieces of the puzzle, okay? So what I want to do now to finish off just this one first piece of the email communication is to draft up those scenarios and talk to you guys and Sarah about them to say like, hey, this is the protocol for this. And therefore, once we do that, then Sarah can say, okay, this is how I can arrange it so that we have this digital record that any one of you guys, and it won't be just us, well, it'll probably be accessible to public. It
So
will.
well, all of it's accessible via
You said you
CoA.
weren't participating.
Absolutely. I mean, right, because anything's attorney-client privilege, we would not put into the 311 system. However, we would make a note in the system that there was attorney-client communication associated with the inquiry, just so that we know from a, housekeeping standpoint. Our intentions would be is that we would work out some kind of frequency. The council would like us to produce that into a PDF that we just add into the info-only packet that lets you see, hey, 2 weeks ago, this is how each of you responded to this, because those are all records that, in that one single format, is not a violation of open records, because you're all receiving and the community has access to that same document. So it's really for your own personal reading, not for the continuation of a discussion. You might want to bring it onto the table for continuation of a discussion after you read that document, but it should not be a continuation of email conversation. So we have to sort of put a stopgap in between using email and switching over to, right now, this PDF version. The other alternative is even more extreme, and that is that we put all of your emails out where they're keyword searchable to anyone, which is what some communities do in radical transparency, that all of your emails just constantly available for public search. I think Jim and I would say, let's have a lot more conversation if you're thinking you might want to go that way, to talk about the pros and cons of that as a way. So we're trying to find this middle ground, something better than where we're at today without that necessarily going to that most extreme route.
Just so I understand it, so the idea is all the email responses, whether we choose to make them individually or not, get captured into this system, and then after the fact, on some regularized basis, we have access to a PDF that helps us see the full picture if and when we want to. Is that it?
Yep, so it would be either like a URL that you constantly know to go to find them, or it's a PDF we send you and you can save them wherever you keep your city files that you can do keyword search on, something of that nature.
That was my next question. So keyword search, any PDF you can keyword search.
Right, we will, if you don't know how to do it, we'll make sure you know how to do keyword search.
Would that be is that the limitation on searchability? Like if I wanted to see, hey, how is Ward talking about a pipe burst or whatever from, this date? Do I have anything to do other than search pipe burst water and maybe if I remember the date?
It's whatever the keywords are you would put in the PDF.
But that's the only search function.
The reason being is I'm not giving council the credentials to go into the back end of the 311 system. It is way more access than you probably want to have responsibility for, because it's really easy to mess it up and there are public records in there. Yeah. And so we're putting the stopgap in about, getting them into that system so we have a record-keeping system that we've designed to support you, but I would not want you in the system on the backside.
Right. Let me ask a question a different way. Other than the keyword search, is there any additional search functionality we would have access to?
Well, dates.
Yeah.
Who it's
by
from,
keyword.
what the subject
Dates.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
All
it's
by keyword.
all keyword. I'm not sure what you're,
Okay.
because I'm not in a position that we have the staffing to go in and say, these were all the comments about affordable housing and that we categorize them. It's not a pivot system, a pivot table at the back.
Okay.
It's a different
what I'm
type of database.
That's one of the things I'm asking.
Right.
And we'll refine it.
Yeah.
We'll
Oh,
refine
no,
it.
that's not a criticism. I'm just trying to understand.
No, it's all good.
trying
I'm
to
just saying,
understand.
like, you know, we're,
I mean, that would be cool, but I'd probably use it almost never, and it would take a lot of work to set up.
That's what we think too. That's why we're like, we're going to keep this as simple as we can
Yeah,
to
I think
meet your
that's.
need.
If the problem comes up 100 times, then we can
Reevaluate
talk about
after a
it.
few months to
Yeah.
see if it's working for you.
I want to make a brief comment. I know that it's past our 7 o'clock, but
was right.
I think it's important that we try to get this done before next June. We have a council that's been working together, begin to know each other. Come June, 3 of us are up for election. We don't know what's going to.
Clarify, the swearing in of new members
know-
happens the first meeting of April.
April.
Oh, it's April now?
Yeah.
Okay, so my comment is geared to us being able to do this before the election. So, and I have that same thing when we have a retreat, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks after we have a new seated council. It's like we hardly know each other, and then we're having a retreat. So I would also like to see that delayed a little bit so that we get to know each other a little bit better before we have a retreat.
Yeah, well, and the third leg of the stool that I was talking about with Sarah's thing needs to come before the retreat. But that would be the sequence of it.
Yeah.
Just to chime in, Ward, I agree. I'd love to see not just this email base, but all of this move forward before we potentially disband.
Right.
Because I think we have been incredibly functional and we continue to improve. And I see the totality of these 3 different areas, as Tori said them, and however we tackle them is fine, as not just setting ourselves, but setting future councils up for success.
Right.
And so I'd love to do that from this functional place. And the one thing that I just want to like put in our headspace as we start to move into this is to think about the criticality of practice. And when I say practice, I mean, what are the agreements within the agreements to support ourselves in making sure we're actually using them? Because the rules that we have are a demonstration that without without practice, we lose touch and they become words on a paper that don't actually influence the interaction of the body. And so we have an opportunity to create or cultivate an environment where us and future councils will actually use these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Future councils may not agree.
Well, they may change it, and that's
Right, and I don't
that's
think we're
great.
looking to overhaul it, especially this close to an election. I think you need to get foundational pieces and know that it will be, and I think with the council, just like the community, it's incremental work. A complete overhaul is a substantial change to how you would operate as a board. And I don't know that I've heard support for a huge change to your operations, but a lot about clarification of your operations in these conversations with you.
I'm not sure if you guys are both responding to you thinking that I'm suggesting a complete overhaul.
Nope.
Oh, okay. I mean, I think some small tweaks can go a real long way to that.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, I think you were just hoping that we can lay some ground rules that future councils can use as
Absolutely.
guardrails.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I appreciate it. I will be following up. You guys have just put a timeline on me, so all good. All good.
All right. Thank you all.
You know, and just while we're speaking of it, Sarah, you know, this stuff is fantastic. You know,
And it's laminated.
And, you know, you've had the table tents and the signage that are down in some of the meeting rooms and stuff. I mean, this is great, you know? I recall 3.5 years ago coming in and going like, we don't have a mission statement? We don't
did say that.
we don't have values identified? How do we even know what we're all talking about? Like, so, you know, we're moving it forward. Sarah's moving it forward, and we'll do our part. All right. Hey, thank you again to GrassRoots as always. We are back next week. And public comment next Tuesday at 5 o'clock. Have a great evening.
I gave you bunny ears really quickly. Sorry.
You've done it before. you.